we are starting with the afternoon session after a really very interesting, important exchange this morning. I'm not going to make any evaluations for the moment, but the afternoon session called Quality Jobs Roadmap and Act, a road towards a new EU legislation within the frame of competitiveness agenda for workers, European investment and transformation for quality jobs. We are going to now delve into the issue of what the competitiveness agenda means for workers, notably in terms of the need for investments and securing better quality jobs. Workers do not benefit from war. Peace is a requisite for a stable economy and for good quality jobs. The worsening geopolitical situation is exacerbating what was already a difficult situation. The US and Israel's war against Iran is impacting people's wallets amid an ongoing cost of living crisis, fueling concerns about energy prices, inflation, and ultimately jobs. Meanwhile, the consequences of Russia's aggression against Ukraine continue to be felt. As trade unionists, we fully understand the need for competitiveness, but ours is a vision of a competitive agenda which delivers a sustainable economy rooted in quality employment, social justice, collective bargaining, strong public and private investment, and a just transition. Europe will only be competitive if it invests in people, productive capacity, innovation, public goods and quality jobs. In contrast, the von der Leyen Commission's 2.0's competitiveness agenda to date indicates that the direction of travel is towards cost-cutting and simplification, which will lead to weaker workers' rights. This is why we welcome the Quality Jobs Roadmap as an important signal that jobs quality must be essential to EU policy. Any competitiveness agenda linked to the Act should be measured against one basic question. Does it improve workers' lives and strengthen social cohesion? Ultimately, the roadmap and subsequently the Quality Jobs Act will be judged by whether they deliver tangible benefits for workers. With our first set of panelists in this afternoon session, we will consider what those tangible benefits would look like and what is needed to achieve them. If Europe is serious about competitiveness, it must be serious about investment, and there can be no successful transformation without investment in public services, industry, infrastructure, housing, energy systems, education and training, and research and innovation. With our second panel, we will then consider how to address the investment and innovation deficits, also being clear that EU or national public funding in support of companies and sectors should not come as a blank check and must not subsidize low wages, union busting, or insecure work. So I would like to welcome all our speakers, and I'm looking forward to our debate. We are starting, and I'm extremely happy and proud with the State Secretary for Labour from Spain, Joaquín Pérez Rey. Warm welcome to you. Happy to have you here again.
Thank you.
And we are starting with you. Try to be within some 10 minutes limit, if possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Es un placer para mí atender esta invitación en el Grupo de Trabajadores del CESE y participar en un debate tan decisivo como es cuál es el futuro de la Europa en materia de empleos de calidad. Yo querría empezar con un peligro latente que está en esta mesa y que es evidente que todos de alguna u otra manera vamos a recorrer. Ese peligro es que Europa parece haber entrado en un mecanismo, en una fórmula languideciente, en virtud del cual lo social deja de ser uno de los elementos principales de su construcción y su desarrollo. El Gobierno español, pero yo creo que la construcción del modelo europeo aspira, y así debe seguir siendo, a que Europa sea el lugar del mundo donde se trabaja con derechos. Debe ser el lugar del mundo donde el trabajo sea decente. Y el modelo europeo de las inversiones, el modelo europeo de la competitividad, es un modelo vinculado a demostrar y lograr convencer al mundo entero que no hay contradicción entre el reconocimiento de derechos laborales, derechos sociales, trabajo decente y gran competitividad. No solo no hay contradicción, sino que es imprescindible. No se puede ser competitivo con trabajos de baja calidad, con trabajos sin formación o sin garantía de un modelo sindical fuerte y amplio. Yo creo que, de alguna manera, la experiencia española puede servir de ejemplo de esto que digo. Yo creo que en España, en materia de calidad en el empleo, como ustedes saben, hemos hecho toda una serie de reformas desde 2020, cuando iniciamos nuestra gestión, hasta ahora, que básicamente han tenido tres elementos, a mi juicio, decisivos, y que yo creo que deberían ser también claves para una futura regulación europea sobre la calidad en el empleo. Yo creo que hay un elemento que no podemos pasar ninguno por alto y que casi me da vergüenza enunciar aquí por ser una evidencia. Pero no hay trabajos de calidad, no hay trabajos protegidos, no hay trabajos con derechos sin organizaciones sindicales fuertes. Este es un elemento clave. No hay trabajo decente sin sindicatos. Y, por lo tanto, la capacidad del sindicato de intervenir y la negociación colectiva son precondiciones imprescindibles para que haya medioambientes de trabajo saludables, sanos y con derechos. Ese es un elemento capital. Bueno, ¿qué le voy a decir a Lorenzo que él no sepa sobre esto? Y a partir de ahí yo creo que es imprescindible que, por tanto, el diálogo social equilibrado y sin vetos sea uno de los instrumentos para que las sociedades europeas avancen en este territorio de una Europa con derechos. España ha demostrado que se puede acabar con la precariedad de los contratos, con la temporalidad abusiva, sin poner en peligro la integridad del empleo y el desarrollo económico. España ha demostrado que se puede subir de forma muy importante los salarios. Hemos subido el salario mínimo interprofesional un 66% desde que estamos en el Gobierno, y no ha habido un resentimiento de nuestra competitividad ni de nuestra capacidad de ser eficientes económicamente. Al revés, hemos conseguido nuestras mejores cifras de empleo, hemos logrado atraer más talento a nuestro sistema productivo y hemos logrado mayor calidad en el trabajo que nunca. Ya saben que España ha superado la barrera de los 22 millones de afiliados, que es una barrera muy importante en un país que jamás había estado en esos términos cuantitativos de empleo. Y yo creo que, además, hay que tener en cuenta que es necesario reforzar, y esto enlazo con lo que decía al inicio, la propia negociación colectiva. Yo creo que otro de los elementos capitales de la reforma laboral española, seguramente no tan publicitado como el que tiene que ver con la estabilidad en el empleo, pero fue establecer mecanismos para que la negociación colectiva no se convirtiera en un instrumento de competencia a la baja en materia de salarios, sino que, al revés, fuera un instrumento de garantía de reconocimiento de mejores condiciones de trabajo y empleo. España también, en su reforma laboral, corrigió la relación entre los convenios sectoriales y los convenios de empresa para evitar que la negociación colectiva fuera un instrumento, insisto, de reducción de salarios. Y esa mejora, que ha tenido un claro impacto, insisto, en la calidad en el empleo en nuestro país. Hoy en España hay más trabajadores indefinidos que nunca, Y hemos conseguido algo que parecía impensable en un país que ha tenido la precariedad como bandera durante años y años. Es decir, la gran reflexión en España había sido que lo importante era crear empleos a pesar de que estos empleos fueran precarios, no duraran o no tuvieran consistencia e identidad, ¿no? Hoy, en un panorama tan incierto como el que nos acaba de dibujar la presidenta, que es un panorama donde hay una fortísima incertidumbre internacional derivada, entre otras cosas, de la agresión ilegal a Irán o de la incertidumbre económica en general por la falta de estabilidad geopolítica, logramos crear empleo de calidad y hemos permitido, por vez primera también, que jóvenes y mujeres que eran personas ajenas a los empleos de calidad, porque este es otro elemento. Cuando alguien renuncia a la calidad del empleo, siempre condena a los más débiles, condena a las mujeres y condena a los jóvenes a vivir en los lugares más estrechos del mercado de trabajo, en los que menos condiciones de empleo hay. Bueno, pues yo creo que hoy, gracias a todas estas reformas, hemos logrado, en la medida de lo posible, dar ese vuelco. Y ese vuelco ha permitido también que incluso el índice de siniestralidad laboral, los accidentes de trabajo, lo que tiene que ver con la seguridad y salud en el trabajo, haya visto también un impacto derivado de la mejora de las condiciones de trabajo en general. Porque, insisto, yo creo que hay, para garantizar entornos de trabajo saludables, estables y con derechos, es condición imprescindible que haya sindicatos fuertes que operen en la negociación colectiva y es imprescindible también, insisto, que logremos que esas condiciones materiales de trabajo permitan mayor seguridad en el trabajo desde el punto de vista propiamente de la salud laboral. E incluso yo creo que hay otro elemento que es decisivo, a mi juicio, para la calidad de los empleos en Europa y en el mundo, que es que allí donde no se dan esos requisitos, y hay muchos lugares donde esas condiciones no se dan, el legislador tiene que intervenir. Y voy a poner varios ejemplos que España también ha llevado a cabo. La regulación de las condiciones de trabajo de las empleadas de hogar. Donde no hay poder de negociación sindical, hay que intervenir para corregir la debilidad de ese poder de negociación. En los riders, en el trabajo en plataformas, en un trabajo dominado básicamente por el trabajo por cuenta propia, si no hay intervención legal, y yo creo que aquí la directiva de plataformas es una gran oportunidad para corregir esa anomalía de que las condiciones de trabajo o la digitalización del siglo XXI no suponga un regreso a las condiciones del trabajo del siglo XIX, yo creo que en todos esos aspectos donde no hay poder de negociación, empleadas de hogar, riders, artistas, que ha sido otro de los colectivos donde en España hemos llevado a cabo una regulación, es imprescindible, además, incorporar el patrimonio de derechos que están vinculados a la estabilidad en el empleo. Creo que luego va a haber otra intervención donde podremos ya hablar más en concreto del Quality Job Act, pero yo lo que sí creo es que hablar de calidad en el empleo no es hablar de figuras retóricas. Es hablar de elementos concretos, de proteger a la gente frente a los riesgos psicosociales, de evitar que los contratos sean precarios cuando no hay causa, de evitar que las cadenas de subcontratación vayan degradando y pervirtiendo los derechos laborales hasta el punto que uno deje de llegar a saber para quién esté trabajando, de proteger a aquellos que cruzan nuestras ciudades en bicicletas de los riesgos a los que se someten y garantizarles condiciones equivalentes a la de cualquier otro trabajador del transporte. En definitiva, lo que quiero decir es que quizá en este momento Europa necesita más concreción y menos retórica y así creo que lo podremos seguir luego discutiendo. Gracias, presidenta. Espero no haberme pasado del tiempo.
Thanks a lot. No, you didn't. I'm always impressed by you being able to keep the speaking time. Brilliant. We need to keep really enough time for a debate then after, because that's always the most interesting part of it. Not saying your part was not interesting. I'm always, you know, it's a paradise to hear good wages do not harm competitiveness. I hope the employers and the Commission hears it as well. But we immediately move to Stefan Olsen, the Deputy Director General of DG EMPO, for 7 minutes, please, so that we keep time for debate. Welcome, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair, State Secretary, honourable members of the Parliament, and I'm very happy to be back here with the workers' group, and I'll try to be brief because also I think for all of us the dialogue is really key. So let me just start with this a bit of the process and look at and carry on from the State Secretary. So I think it was crucial, as we know, when we had the Draghi report, we had the setting up of the new Commission, the competitiveness compass, that there was this very strong acknowledgement that quality jobs is part of this package. That quality jobs represents the fundamental values, but also productivity, and is really part of our socio-economic model, as the State Secretary said very well. So more concretely, that meant that my Executive Vice President Roxana Minsato got in her mission letter the task to produce a quality jobs roadmap. And this roadmap we presented at the end of last year. What was important, apart from content in that, was that for the first time ever, I think at EU level, in the mission from the President to Minsato, was that she should prepare it together with the social partners. And that was a really strong statement that quality jobs is really closely linked with social dialogue. We took this very, very seriously, and we did something that I think we've never done before, which was that we spoke not only to the European social partners, but we spoke to the European social partners in all 27 member states in dedicated meetings. And that was very interesting. I had the pleasure of being part of many of those discussions. A lot of similarities, but also we could see different challenges in different member states that were important to get when we then produced the roadmap. And I don't want to spend too much time on the content of the roadmap. I think many of the issues that the State Secretary and you, Chair, raised are there. It's the kind of ecosystem around quality jobs. No, how we can contribute at EU level. One, in terms of supporting the creation of jobs with a number of initiatives. Also, the very, very important implementation of existing law. I spent this morning in a very intense meeting where we prepare these infringement proceedings that we proposed the College to adopt. And we have now, of course, transparent and predictable working conditions, which is an ambitious directive that many of you know and remember. We have minimum wage that is being implemented as well. Very important that we get that right and that member states take that up. We also have, as some of my colleagues will be very fond of, the carcinogens directives that we are implementing, asbestos, etc. So I think it's a matter of also not forgetting the past and taking the benefit of the presentation by the State Secretary. I think one very interesting process is to see how Spain moved from this reliance on fixed-term contract that you had after the financial crisis 2008 to a very sincere work together with the European level as well, in order to do this very tough reform to go back to permanent employment. And that's a typical quality jobs issue that Spain has taken very seriously, and I think that's a typical example of what the roadmap is about. But then, adding to the roadmap, the President announced last year that we would also look at legislative gaps and start a consultation on a Quality Jobs Act. And that's where we are right now. We did the first stage consultation, and we are in the process of launching the second stage consultation. All of you know the process, that in order to prepare legislation or consider legislation, we go through this very important two-stage consultation process. And here we are, of course, looking at the key issues that are being raised, many of them coming from reports from the European Parliament, also discussions in this House. And just to reiterate them, we have the issue of how do we deal with subcontracting, how do we deal with algorithmic management and AI, also taking into account in both those areas what are the competencies of the EU, what is the existing legislation, and where can we really add value. Then, of course, we have the issue of health and safety at work, where the issue of the workplace becomes very important in the current working conditions, and also issues like you mentioned, State Secretary, psychosocial risks, etc. So here we are really seeking the views of the social partners, also complementing the process that we already did on the right to disconnect, where we already finished the two-stage, but which will be part of this process. So I think that is a very interesting process. We are now seeing also, of course, if the social partners are interested to negotiate. So far, we haven't seen a joint request for this, but that is, of course, also a purpose of this exercise. And let me just before, so I'm complete, mention that in this we're also, of course, looking at the report by the Parliament on just transitions. And we're also looking at the role of the social partners and how that can be strengthened also in terms of capacity building and in light with the pact that the social partners signed last year and their joint work together. So I will stop here, Chair, because again I just wanted to give you the general picture and then happy to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just couldn't hold myself. Trade unions are ready to negotiate. Let's not put all the social partners in just one basket, you know. Estelle, your view, your proposals, and I'm going to stop you at some point because I know you. Go ahead.
So thank you. I will switch to French if it's possible for you. I'll let you time. Je vous laisse le temps de mettre vos écouteurs. C'est toujours plus simple de pouvoir s'exprimer quand même. Alors peut-être juste rappeler qu'on vient de loin. On vient de très très loin sur la question de l'emploi et de la qualité. Juste rappeler quand même que dans le premier distribution des portefeuilles par Madame van der Leyen au niveau de la Commission européenne, nous n'avions même pas de commissaire à l'emploi. On avait une commissaire à People, Skills and Preparedness. On a dû se battre déjà au niveau du Parlement européen et nous avons effectivement une commissaire sur le Quality Job. Par contre, si on regarde bien effectivement sa lettre de mission, qui vient d'être mentionnée ici par M. Olsen, sa lettre de mission aujourd'hui ne prévoit aucune initiative législative, pas de Quality Job Act, mais bien effectivement des initiatives pour mieux réguler le management par algorithme et une initiative aussi sur le droit à la déconnexion. C'est tout ce qu'il y a. Si on compare d'ailleurs, je l'ai déjà dit avec M. Nicolas Schmitt, il y avait au moins 5 initiatives législatives, donc rien. Et si on regarde effectivement le programme de travail de la Commission, pas de nouvelles initiatives législatives, sauf le Quality Job Act. Et donc c'est vraiment une des raisons pour laquelle, pour nous, c'est un travail évidemment important et je vais essayer de vous expliquer dans quels termes on aura d'essayer de le préparer. Juste, effectivement, donc il y a une consultation des partenaires sociaux et je serais intéressée, évidemment, je pense que ce sera sans doute le représentant de la CES qui pourra nous donner un petit peu plus d'infos sur où on en est sur cette consultation et les propositions qui sont faites aujourd'hui. Mais voilà, étant donné qu'en principe, le travail d'un Parlement, c'est surtout de voter des budgets et de nouvelles réglementations pour protéger, parce qu'il le faut, protéger effectivement les travailleurs par rapport aux nouveaux challenges qui sont les leurs aujourd'hui, et travailler sur effectivement la Quality Job Act. Voilà, malgré tout, on n'est pas au chômage dans notre commission emploi et affaires sociales, je peux vous le rassurer. Donc, ce qui a été dit déjà en filigrane par M. Olsen, de ce qu'on entend, c'est que dans le Quality Job Act, il y aura 5 piliers. Le premier pilier va concerner effectivement l'aspect digital, le nouveau challenge digital pour les travailleurs. Et donc, il y aura un volet effectivement sur l'intelligence artificielle sur le lieu de travail et un volet qui concerne le management par algorithme ou le droit à la déconnexion. Donc, on a évidemment beaucoup d'attentes par rapport à ça parce que, comme M. Olsen l'a souligné, nous avons travaillé à un rapport d'initiative législative sur intelligence artificielle sur le lieu de travail, tout comme il y en avait un sous le précédent mandat sur le droit à la déconnexion. Donc on attend en principe de véritables directives, pas juste un Quality Job Act, mais on fera avec si nécessaire. Mais donc on veut effectivement mieux travailler, protéger les travailleurs et pas que les travailleurs de plateforme qui sont exposés au management par algorithme. On veut par exemple qu'il y ait de l'humain derrière toute décision importante de sélection, recrutement, contrôle, licenciement, mais même au-delà. Donc, notamment de l'évaluation de l'état émotionnel des travailleurs, parce que c'est parfois une réalité. Donc, premier élément. Donc, l'aspect digital. Deuxième élément qu'on entend qui va se retrouver aussi dans ce Quality Job Act, c'est un aspect Just Transition. Alors, ça a l'air évidemment toujours un peu abstrait, mais nous avons aussi rendu un rapport, en tout cas voté un rapport au niveau du Parlement européen d'initiative législative pour avoir une directive sur la transition juste. De quoi s'agit-il? C'est de mieux protéger les travailleurs qui aujourd'hui déjà, et demain certainement encore plus, sont confrontés à l'impact des grandes transitions. Alors, on en identifie 2, digitale, verte. Moi, j'identifie aussi la nécessaire réindustrialisation de l'Europe. Et donc des travailleurs qui vont avoir besoin d'être formés, d'avoir de nouvelles formations parce qu'ils sont éventuellement en risque ou en réorientation professionnelle ou en risque de perdre leur emploi. Et donc, il faut mieux les protéger par rapport à ça. C'est ce qu'on appelle, et notamment leur assurer un vrai droit à la formation. C'est ce que nous avons effectivement réclamé dans notre rapport d'initiative législative. Troisième élément que l'on entend, c'est effectivement la question des subcontracting, donc la sous-traitance. Donc non seulement la sous-traitance, mais un meilleur encadrement aussi de ce qu'on appelle les intermédiaires dans la sous-traitance. Donc pas besoin de vous expliquer que dans certains secteurs comme la construction, la logistique, mais également l'alimentation, on a parfois des chaînes de sous-traitance absolument hallucinantes, jusqu'à 17 niveaux, qui sont clairement faits pour l'exploitation, la mise en danger des travailleurs. Voilà. On a aussi rendu un rapport et voté un rapport au niveau du Parlement européen. Malheureusement, on a perdu pas mal de plumes parce qu'il y a eu beaucoup d'opposition sur ce rapport. C'est bien triste parce que je pense que même les entreprises, c'est vraiment une question de protection en ce qui les concerne et d'avoir du level playing field parce que avoir autant de niveaux de chaîne de sous-traitance, c'est clairement pas pour respecter le level playing field. Et même pour les PME, avoir autant de niveaux de chaîne de sous-traitance, ça ne leur permet pas d'avoir accès parfois à certains marchés publics. Enfin, ça demanderait des heures pour en discuter, mais donc il y aura un volet là-dessus. Lequel, on ne sait pas, mais en tout cas, on a beaucoup d'attentes et il y a des éléments quand même clairs dans le rapport qu'on a voté. Quatrième élément qui serait repris, quatrième pilier qui serait repris dans ce Quality Job Act, c'est effectivement des éléments liés en santé et sécurité des travailleurs et en particulier, ça a été souligné, les risques psychosociaux. Risques psychosociaux, en tout cas les problèmes de santé mentale qui deviennent une véritable épidémie partout au niveau européen, qui est un vrai challenge, y compris pour les entreprises, excusez-moi de le souligner, parce que les personnes qui explosent en plein vol à cause du burn-out, c'est souvent effectivement les travailleurs les plus impliqués, et on observe dans de nombreux secteurs des problèmes justement de pénurie d'emploi qui sont liés aux conditions de travail, mais aussi effectivement aux problèmes de santé mentale au travail. Donc, on travaille pour le moment, et j'ai la chance d'en être rapportrice, j'ai déposé un draft, on va travailler sur un rapport d'initiative législative à nouveau pour réclamer une vraie directive pour mieux prévenir, donc travailler à la prévention des risques psychosociaux avec définition de ces risques psychosociaux, avec une responsabilité des entreprises, avec aussi l'information, avec le respect du dialogue social. Bon, de toute façon, la question du dialogue social se trouve à travers l'ensemble de nos rapports, en tout cas ceux que j'ai mentionnés. Mais voilà, donc juste dire, on a reçu déjà au niveau de la commission Ample une chouette petite lettre de Business Europe que je suis prête à partager avec vous sur ce rapport sur les risques psychosociaux, puisqu'ils sont évidemment vent debout aujourd'hui, puisqu'on est plus dans une phase de dérégulation plutôt que de répondre aux vrais challenges auxquels sont confrontés les travailleurs aujourd'hui. Dernier et cinquième élément qui serait repris en tout cas dans ce Quality Job Act, c'est effectivement un renforcement en tout cas des services d'inspection, parce que sur le terrain, on peut avoir les meilleures lois possibles si on n'a pas aussi des services d'inspection qui sont bien outillés. C'est ce qu'on entend. Donc on attend évidemment la proposition qui va arriver, mais en attendant, vous l'avez compris, nous, notre intention au niveau du Parlement européen, c'est de tirer le plus de lignes possible, comme on l'a déjà fait sur AI at the workplace, comme on l'a déjà fait sur les chaînes de sous-traitance et l'encadrement des intermédiaires, comme on l'a fait sur Just Transition, comme on est en train de le faire, puisque le rapport sur les risques psychosociaux sera voté en commission emploi début septembre et en plénière au mois d'octobre. Donc voilà, on essaye effectivement de tirer le plus de lignes possible. Dernier élément, j'arrête après, c'est effectivement, vous savez que la Commission doit arriver cette année aussi avec un nouveau plan d'action pour la mise en œuvre du pilier européen des droits sociaux. Pour le moment, on a 3 indicateurs. Il n'y en a qu'un pour lequel, effectivement, on performe plus ou moins. C'était des indicateurs avec des objectifs à atteindre pour 2030. Le premier, c'était augmenter le taux d'emploi. Oui, le taux d'emploi s'est amélioré depuis le premier plan d'action, mais pour quel type d'emploi? Et c'est peut-être une des raisons pour laquelle il faut travailler à la qualité de l'emploi. Deuxième, c'était effectivement l'accès à la formation, on est loin du compte. Troisièmement, c'était lutte contre la pauvreté, on est très loin du compte. Mais donc, juste pour dire que nous voulons aussi un 4e indicateur, notamment pour ce futur plan d'action, en particulier centré sur la qualité de l'emploi. Et je m'arrête là, prête évidemment à tous les débats par la suite. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. That was incredible and on time. Claude, as rapporteur of the SOC opinion, Quality Jobs Roadmap, your input into the debate.
Merci. Et tout d'abord, moi je me félicite de l'initiative de la Commission. J'ai envie de dire, quand j'ai vu ce document, je me dis, ouf, enfin quelque chose qui va nous intéresser et sur lequel on va pouvoir répondre aux attentes des travailleurs. C'est quelque chose qui me paraît essentiel. Enfin, on reconnaît, et je trouve que c'est pas mal quand la Commission l'écrit sur un texte, qu'il y a un lien tout à fait intime entre la qualité de l'emploi et la compétitivité. Et qu'il n'y a pas de compétitivité possible s'il n'y a pas de qualité de l'emploi, et qu'il n'y a pas de qualité possible de l'emploi s'il n'y a pas de compétitivité. C'est un peu bizarre quand même de dire que je me réjouis de quelque chose comme ça. Ça me paraissait être une évidence depuis longtemps, mais je suis satisfait et je trouve que c'est une bonne chose que la Commission puisse le dire et puisse l'écrire. Alors, on ne doit pas, on peut effectivement avoir une série de critiques et j'y reviendrai quand même, mais on ne doit pas bouder notre plaisir. Ça fait quand même pas mal de temps qu'on entend surtout de la Commission tout ce qui va avec, en gros, la boussole compétitivité, la simplification qui souvent a un relent de dérégulation quand même. Ça fait du bien de voir qu'il y a peut-être là, et c'est ce que j'espère, la conviction de la Commission que pour conduire l'économie et l'Union européenne, il faut effectivement un tableau de bord. Et que ce tableau de bord, oui, il a besoin d'une boussole de compétitivité. Oui, elle est importante. Mais à côté de cette boussole de compétitivité, il a besoin d'une boussole sociale qui répond aux attentes des uns et des autres. Et ça, c'était quelque chose d'essentiel. C'est aussi tout à fait positif de voir la place que veut donner la Commission à la négociation collective. Maintenant, je donne une série d'éléments tout à fait réjouissants. Malheureusement, il faut regarder aussi les choses de façon lucide. Et ce qu'on a aujourd'hui, c'est une feuille de route. C'est une feuille de route, c'est bien, mais ce n'est qu'une feuille de route. Et comme l'a dit Estelle, on attend de savoir quel va pouvoir être le suivi. Qu'est-ce que ça va prendre comme forme? Est-ce que ça va être une directive? Est-ce que ça va être une directive fourre-tout? Est-ce que ça va être un règlement? Quelles sont les actions qui vont être mises en œuvre? Parce que ce qui serait encore pire que de ne rien faire, c'est de créer une attente par rapport aux travailleurs et de décevoir cette attente in fine. Et donc pour moi, la crédibilité de cette feuille de route, elle sera dans l'expression concrète et dans les obligations, ce qui est opposable et contrôlable, qui sera mis en route. Alors, comme rapporteur, on a commencé les premières discussions et je dois dire qu'on n'a eu qu'un groupe d'études et ça s'est passé très bien avec, et je ne le dis pas par stratégie, on a pu trouver un climat, en tous les cas, de discussion et d'échange qui était tout à fait positif. Mais quand j'ai commencé à travailler pour proposer un draft, j'ai pris la position qu'avait rentrée Business Europe à la Commission et j'ai pris la position d'ETUC. Et je me suis dit, ça va, mon travail de rapporteur va être terriblement facilité. J'ai fait 2 colonnes et à la 3e colonne, je vais mettre ce qui est mon rapport, c'est-à-dire ce qui est commun entre les employeurs et les syndicats. Ouais. J'avais préparé la feuille A3, je vais un peu exagérer en caricaturant, mais assez vite, je me suis retrouvé avec un ticket de métro pour écrire ce qui était convergent. C'est-à-dire qu'il y a énormément de divergences. Alors, ce n'est pas vraiment étonnant. Ici, au niveau du comité, on sait à quel point les sujets qui sont repris dans la feuille de route sont des sujets qui provoquent une certaine conflictualité. Et ça fait partie du dialogue social aussi, cette conflictualité. Il ne faut pas la rejeter. Je pense que l'important des conflits, c'est de les avoir, c'est de dire quand on n'est pas d'accord, mais surtout d'avoir la capacité de dépasser le désaccord pour produire une plus-value qui correspond à ce que peuvent attendre les uns et les autres. Et malheureusement, je trouve que dans ce que j'ai lu de Business Europe, j'ai un peu du mal. J'ai un peu du mal à comprendre que certains, heureusement pas tous, certains employeurs n'ont pas l'air de comprendre que la formation, c'est un impératif total pour eux en termes de compétitivité. Et que si on veut avancer dans la formation, ce n'est pas seulement faire en sorte que ceux qui ont l'habitude de suivre des formations en suivent plus et encore plus, mais c'est de faire en sorte que tout travailleur ait la possibilité de se former. Ça s'appelle un droit à la formation, qu'on retrouve notamment dans les textes du socle social. C'est toute la question de la pénurie. Moi, j'entends plein d'employeurs qui, à juste titre, ils ne racontent pas des blagues, qui ont des problèmes pour recruter des talents, qui ont des problèmes pour recruter des travailleurs. Mais ce recrutement, il va aussi à la capacité de les attirer, de les garder, et ça, la condition, c'est de travailler sur la qualité du travail. Je pourrais aller beaucoup plus loin sur ces éléments, mais vous voyez le sens de ce que je veux dire. Je voudrais rajouter 2 choses pour terminer mon intervention. Un, c'est quoi l'enjeu pour nous comme travailleurs alentour de ça? Eh bien, l'enjeu, c'est effectivement, et quand je dis comme travailleurs au niveau du comité économique et social, c'est d'obtenir un avis, une opinion la plus partagée possible. Pourquoi? Parce que tu y es parlementaire, j'ai été parlementaire en mon temps, je sais d'expérience que quand une opinion du comité économique et social arrive sur la table du Parlement européen, s'il est voté une large majorité, je mets des guillemets, de 66%, eh bien il va à la poubelle. Il n'a quasi aucune importance. Donc nous devons travailler à avoir la plus large assise dans la vie que nous allons pouvoir rendre. Et, sorry, mais ce n'est pas ton groupe qui en peut quelque chose, mais quand on sait, nous, comme travailleurs, quel est le rapport politique à l'intérieur du Parlement européen, on sait qu'on ne doit pas trop compter sur une majorité européenne aujourd'hui. C'est nous qui devons faire le job. Et je pense que le lieu, qui est le comité économique et social, fait partie de ces lieux utiles et pertinents pour faire ce job. Dernière chose que je voudrais évoquer, c'est que ce n'est pas qu'un enjeu pour les travailleurs et pour les entreprises. C'est aussi un enjeu pour la démocratie européenne. On le voit un peu partout. Les formations populistes, l'extrême droite, les formations néofascistes sont en train de monter en puissance. Quel est leur terreau? Eh bien, leur terreau, c'est le mal-être des travailleurs, c'est le mal-être des citoyens, c'est les attentes non rencontrées. Et je pense que si nous, en tous les cas, c'est le pari que je fais, et c'est ce que je veux essayer d'arriver en tous les cas comme rapporteur, que nous arrivions ensemble, employeurs, société civile, syndicats, à trouver suffisamment de consensus pour aller à la rencontre de ces enjeux-là. C'est clair, compétitivité, qualité du travail, ça va ensemble. Nous devons avoir la capacité de le prouver. Nous ne le ferions pas, nous serions en train, ensemble, de décrédibiliser l'outil important qu'est le Comité économique et social européen. Merci.
Thank you very much. And last, of course, not least speaker, ETUC. Laura, the floor is yours, 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Thank you, colleagues, for this occasion and for this very important discussion, and indeed this is a very important moment to have this discussion and an issue of great importance, because this year will really be decisive in giving the direction of this institutional term. We know that in the previous institutional term we had an important ambition in terms of social legislation. We had the Minimum Wage Directive, we had the Platform Workers Directive, Gender Pay Transparency Directive, also in terms of health and safety, important steps forward. And also in the last term, these steps forward, despite or even in reason of important crises that the European Union has to deal with and had to face. And even in those crises, we were able to give a response that was a response of solidarity, of investment in our common project of social cohesion, with the SURE, with the Next Generation EU, and so on and so forth. Now, we are 2 years almost, 1 year and something, into the next term, and we are in front of crises that are as significant, if not more significant, than the ones we had to face a few years ago. So this year is decisive in assessing whether the European Union will, and that is the direction that it must take, will go once again in the direction of social cohesion, of solidarity, and of, as Joaquin was mentioning before, of a model of progress, economic progress that is based on social cohesion, on quality jobs, on strong unions, and on social progress. And this is the way to take because, and here again, Joaquin said it very, very well, Spain is giving us the example that in order to get economic growth, in order to get also competitiveness, quality jobs, strong social cohesion, strong unions, collective bargaining, those are key pillars to ensure strong competitivity for the European economy and economic growth. And this is, as Estelle mentioned, is not a new discussion. We are coming from quite some time from this. So, of course, and this is also the result of this attention by the European Commission of fights that as European Trade Union Movement we have been carrying on since the Berlin Congress to bring some issues to the attention of the European institutions, together with the progressive governments, and we know the Spanish, the Belgian presidency, how far they have brought the discussion on certain elements. We remember all the discussions on the Barcelona Declaration on the right to training, all the discussions on the La Hulpe Declaration that included several of the elements that now we are fighting for, and now the work that Estelle was referring to of the European Parliament to have legislative and non-legislative reports that include those objectives. So there is nothing improvised of the discussions we are having. There is nothing that is not based on evidence, on real needs of working people to have advances in terms of quality jobs. And if we look at the data, we know how much work is still to be done, because despite the directive on minimum wage, we have still 18 member states where the collective bargaining coverage is below 80%. We have still 1 every 10 workers who is at risk of poverty today in the European Union. We have still amongst young people, young workers between below 24 years of age, more than half that have non-permanent contract, non-open-ended contracts. If we go to certain member states like the Netherlands, 1 worker every 4 has a temporary contract. So, and here again, the Spanish model is giving us some important directions. Also in dealing with the changes in terms of digitalization, in terms of artificial intelligence. And EU OSHA is saying to us that almost 50% of workers feel that because of digitalization, the pace of work has increased in the last years. And 1/3 of workers have experienced increased surveillance or increased workload because of digitalization. So the challenges that are in front of working people indeed must be met and must be met quickly and with the right ambition. So for this reason, now there is a certain expectation that is on the shoulders of the European Commission, and of course on the shoulders of all of us, to make sure that the European Union can deliver a Quality Jobs Act that is meaningful and it is ambitious. And the first stage consultation, and I'm happy to indeed reply to the question or to the element raised by Estelle, was a good and important step, because it was indeed pointing out as direction areas which, as trade union movement, we have signaled of priority: subcontracting, labour intermediation, right to disconnect and telework, artificial intelligence, psychosocial risks, just transitions, and of course the issue of enforcement of promotion of collective bargaining. Those are the right areas to focus on. Those are very important areas to focus on. And in the first stage consultation, indeed, as European trade union movement, and then perhaps we will get into the detail of some of those elements, we have provided our reply and evidence as to why we need the binding legislation on those areas. And this is also the message that's come and is coming with great strength also from the European Parliament. And perhaps we will get more into the details of what is needed in the exchange and in the subsequent interventions. I would like just to make 2 points additional at this stage. So first, those are the right areas, but we need binding legislation now. We can't have, in Italian we say, the big mountain that gives birth to the little mouse. So if we say that quality jobs are an important pillar of competitiveness, then we can expect that the European Commission will pursue this pillar with the same intensity as, for example, they pursued the simplification avenue. So we have had 10 omnibuses, or I don't know how many, so we need a powerful Quality Jobs Act, because working people need to see that the European Union is delivering also for them. And in this framework, of course, collective bargaining and a promotion of collective bargaining on some of those aspects will need to be an important component of the Quality Jobs Act. And here the case, the judgment that the Court of Justice has given on the minimum wage directives gives also an important direction. Because, for example, and I just make an example, on anticipation and management of change, the promotion of collective bargaining at sectoral and company level on those matters is a very important step. And perhaps a final point, and then I stop because I'm already going beyond the time. There was a mention also of the action plan on the implementation of the pillar. Of course, we need binding legislation and on these areas, but also an additional headline target on quality jobs could also be an additional important step to take. And I stop here for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all the speakers at the initial phase. I mean, I've got a lot of questions prepared for the speakers, but let's use the chance we are having them here, and let's give the floor to you first. So I can see Jose Antonio, Cinzia, I can see Sofia, Mari Carmen, I can see Florian. Okay, let's start with these 5 speakers, and Jose Antonio, go for it.
Thank you very much. I'm going to speak in Spanish. Muchas gracias a los ponentes. Y quiero mencionar, voy a hablar de mi libro, voy a hablar de inmigración. Desde el Grupo de Migración e Integración de la Confederación Europea de Sindicatos, junto con algunos think tanks europeos, hemos trabajado en la oportunidad de aprovechar la hoja de ruta para un empleo de calidad, para recordar la precariedad, la vulnerabilidad de esos más de 20 millones de trabajadores y trabajadoras extranjeras en la Unión Europea. Parece muchas veces que el movimiento sindical no percibe, no se da cuenta de la especial vulnerabilidad, explotabilidad y precariedad de la clase trabajadora que viene de países diferentes a los de la Unión, que tienen dificultades en articular sus reivindicaciones, que tienen diferencias culturales con respecto al hecho de la sindicación en sindicatos de clase y que tienen dificultades incluso para articular las denuncias, lo cual genera situaciones de desprotección y de máxima explotabilidad. Nuevamente, en este contexto, mi país, España, es un ejemplo de lo que se debe hacer, ¿no? Es decir, ahora mismo hemos comenzado un proceso de regularización la semana pasada que aparentemente va a incorporar medio millón de trabajadores y trabajadoras extranjeras al mercado de trabajo, haciéndoles surgir de la indecencia de la explotación laboral en el mercado negro. Pero además el modelo español ha demostrado que se puede tener altas cotas de inmigración con un crecimiento exponencial del empleo, una reducción del desempleo y un crecimiento económico exponencial. Por lo tanto, es una culminación de un buen ejemplo y unas buenas prácticas. Creo que el movimiento sindical no debería olvidar, y me dirijo a todos los ponentes por si pueden hacer un breve comentario, no debería olvidar que hay un grupo dentro de la clase trabajadora que es especialmente precario, vulnerable y explotable, que son los trabajadores inmigrantes, que no podemos esperar nada de la Comisión Europea porque lo que nos ofrece es exclusivamente políticas represivas de control, y me remito a al reglamento de repatriaciones o a la estrategia de la Unión Europea sobre inmigración y asilo, que lo único que propone son hubs de retorno en países terceros o facilitar las expulsiones, mientras que no nos habla de vías legales, ordenadas, eficaces y ágiles de inmigración laboral, más allá de esa entelequia del talent pool que nadie concibe con un realismo mínimo de incorporación de talento extranjero al mercado de trabajo europeo. Por lo tanto, simplemente planteo, no nos olvidemos de exigir en este contexto, en este momentum, que también los trabajadores extranjeros deben ser beneficiados de esta hoja de ruta para el empleo de calidad y que se mantenga la inmigración una hoja de ruta social imprescindible para el modelo social, económico y cultural de la Unión Europea. Gracias.
Thank you very much. Cinzia, please.
I will speak in Italian. Grazie, vorrei fare alcuni commenti. La settimana scorsa ero al Parlamento per l'iniziativa della Commissione EMPL, quindi abbiamo ascoltato molte questioni. Io alla Commissione vorrei dire questo, ma anche in generale, sentendo quanto è stato detto. La legislazione, non bisogna avere paura della legislazione, perché in questa casa sentiamo spesso basta con la legislazione, soprattutto di carattere sociale. Ne abbiamo troppa, concentriamoci a implementare quello che abbiamo. Un principio deve essere che la legislazione si adatta ai cambiamenti. È una cosa normale nei nostri paesi che la legislazione si adatta e quindi è un principio che deve valere anche per la legislazione europea. Ora, è chiaro che ci vuole un'effettiva implementazione di quello che noi abbiamo e quindi anche dei meccanismi che diceva delle procedure di infrazione. Guarda caso, strano, non abbiamo procedure di infrazione nel semestre europeo per i paesi che non rispettano gli indicatori del Social Convergence Framework, per esempio. Quindi abbiamo delle procedure di infrazione per la parte economica, ma non per la parte sociale. Ora, si è detto ci vogliono sindacati forti, sono d'accordissimo. Lorenzo ha detto la direttiva sul salario minimo non viene implementata. La settimana scorsa allo study group di Claude sul parere sul quality jobs ci è stato detto sì, va bene la contrattazione, però solo se volontaria, non ci vuole una normativa europea che la imponga. Quindi il piano di azione nazionale è volontaria, la contrattazione è solo volontaria. Poi abbiamo la metà dei paesi europei che hanno una copertura contrattuale tra il 20 e il 30% e tutti gli altri lavoratori cosa fanno? Sono fuori dalle dinamiche delle tutele. Allora servono le enabling conditions per aiutare la contrattazione e qui viene il nodo della mancanza dell'implementazione della direttiva. Lì occorre un'azione forte da parte della Commissione, c'è una direttiva, è vincolante, quindi noi chiediamo che ci sia un'azione forte. Povertà lavorativa e precarietà, sono d'accordo, non voglio intervenire su questo. Sempre la settimana scorsa la Commissione europea, la DG EMPL, ci dice che non c'è una definizione di lavoro di qualità, non ci può essere una definizione. Estelle dice noi vogliamo questo nel nuovo pacchetto. Eurofound, che era presente alla riunione, ha detto come? Noi siamo una agenzia tripartita e abbiamo gli indicatori che definiscono il lavoro di qualità. Allora, o una o l'altra cosa. Eurofound, li abbiamo discussi insieme gli indicatori. Perché non possono essere presi questi come un riferimento per il lavoro di qualità nel nuovo action plan? Questo punto interrogativo che rimane sospeso. Allora, per essere pragmatici, cosa può essere fatto? Giustamente Stefan diceva, abbiamo chiesto alle parti sociali di sapere se vogliono negoziare. Certo, le parti sociali, il sindacato è sempre disponibile a negoziare, però tacchete, cosa scatta? Scusatemi se sono un po'... Business Europe adesso è disponibile a negoziare sui rischi psicosociali, spacchettando il Quality Jobs Roadmap e tutte le altre parti che ci sono lì. No, non si spacchetta, o si negozia tutto insieme o non si prende solo quello che va bene. Perché sul diritto alla disconnessione ci siamo divisi come parti sociali, adesso prendiamo altri pezzettini. Questo non è un approccio serio, ecco perché stiamo discutendo e tutto. Quindi cosa possiamo ottenere? Noi sappiamo che c'è stato l'incontro, anche noi, EU-OSHA ci ha dato tutti gli indicatori chiari, tutti i dati chiari sui rischi psicosociali e noi ci aspettiamo uno strumento legislativo su questo, ci aspettiamo uno strumento legislativo sulla gestione dell'algoritmo. So che siamo molto lontani, però noi questo lo chiediamo perché abbiamo evidenza delle distorsioni che ci sono. Ci aspettiamo un intervento legislativo sul subappalto, perché come si diceva è una questione per noi dirimente, e anche il diritto alla formazione, Claude, l'abbiamo già detto in questa casa, è già nei nostri pareri. È già nei nostri pareri, non dobbiamo tornare indietro, il diritto alla formazione continua, quindi su questo basterebbe poco per arrivarci. Mi fermo qui, volevo solo commentare per buttare un po' di fuoco nella discussione.
Thank you very much, Cinzia. Sophia, please.
Thank you. I will not repeat what Cinzia already explained. I did have some notes, especially on the social dialogue aspect as well, just underlining that, yes, I think social dialogue and the role of social partners is crucial, and we would love to have more of it. But I think that the past few years and maybe even decades have shown that we have quite a lot of disparities here. And when I'm looking at the implementation of the Pay Transparency Directive these days, for instance, here in Austria, where I'm coming from, it is pretty much impossible to get to compromise within the social partners, which it's really a pity. So just a message, I think we really need the legal standards. It is important to have EU frameworks, standards and directives in order to make some progress. I love to have more room for social partners as well, but we need some framework there. So this would be just underlining and highlighting what Cinzia said. Maybe towards the Commission, I think we all appreciated the mission letter from Ursula von der Leyen to Minzato and having a clear call for quality jobs priority. But I think from the trade union point of view, what we see is the huge competitiveness agenda dominating EU regulation. So having all of these omnibuses, we've heard it with simplification or deregulation, however you may call it. We have gaps in the implementation. So having quality jobs is, in turn, we would say, a drop on a hot stone, which at least creates some vapor. So there is something, but it's just a teeny tiny bit in a broader context. While we fight for defending rights, existing rights, we would like to see some progress there as well. So this is why it is a very important item for us. And then I would like to highlight a second thing that we haven't really discussed among the whole competitiveness situation, and this is financial restraints. We do have a lot of investment in certain sectors, defense, but we don't have investment in, for instance, health and social services, because the member states do not have the capacities to actually spend in these areas. And this would be really something I would like to ask the Commission as well as Barasadaei about the reality of the multi-financial framework playing together with the Quality Jobs Roadmap, looking also at the less funding in the ESF and so on. I think we are facing some troubles there. And when we call for strengthening labor inspectorates and member states not really having the funding to equip the labor inspectorates, we end up at the same situation. So this is something I would like you to explore a little more, because I think it's crucial in the whole area. Then the second topic I would like to highlight is the psychosocial risks. I won't go into details there. Estelle, thank you for the first draft. I think this would really be impressive if we made progress in this direction, and it's really excellent. Just a question to you, because I assume that you've been working with a lot of stakeholders preparing the report. I have heard that there is a lot of practice out there, that there are a lot of standards out there when it comes to risk assessment, and that a lot of companies are already doing this. So do you have the impression it might be easier to get it across because there is already some experience out there, so that we put some practice into the legal framework, or are there still some disparities and conflicts to get over with, especially the employer side, when it comes to having legally binding standards? I think this will be quite interesting in the upcoming months. And then a third area that I would like to put out there, and this is going to all of the panelists, occupational safety and health. One dimension we have not really discussed yet is gender. And there is a lot of change going on when it comes to climate change. There's a lot of change going on when it comes to digital risk. We have discussed this, but then there is still the female dimension at the workplace. There are a lot of taboos going around, for instance, menstruation, menopause, and so on, but they have a huge impact. They have an impact on productivity as well, to give it to the employers. So just a question to you, how we could explore the gender dimension within the Quality Jobs Act and improve working life for women. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Marie Carmen, please.
I speak Spanish. Bueno, yo quería agradecer, lo primero empezar agradecer a Lucy y al equipo de la Secretaría por invitar hoy a Joaquín, que la verdad es que creo que su presencia aquí es realmente importante. Bueno, tengo que agradecerte, Joaquín, que seas un secretario de Estado de un gobierno de un país europeo y que digas tan claramente necesitamos sindicatos fuertes. Yo creo que con eso te has ganado a toda la audiencia, porque desde luego no podemos estar más de acuerdo. La oportunidad de traer a Joaquín, como decía hoy aquí, es porque ¿cuál es el problema que tenemos actualmente en Europa? Se ha dicho repetidamente, es decir, se está abandonando la agenda social por los ómnibus, por muchísimas cosas. Es muy preocupante, a mí me preocupa mucho que no tengamos todavía ese plan de acción del pilar social, de derechos sociales, y que no tengamos comprometida ninguna directiva social en el calendario. Todo ello con la excusa de que tenemos que estar ahora embarcados en normas sobre competitividad, sobre simplificación, como si no se pudiera ser más competitivo y simplificar más los trámites del negocio en Europa, mejorando lo que son los derechos de las personas trabajadoras, mejorando la calidad del empleo, como se dice, pero mejorando también el diálogo social y reforzando la negociación colectiva, cosas que son muy importantes, y sobre todo, y más importante que todo eso, atacando la precariedad, que la precariedad sí existe en Europa, aunque algunos la nieguen, como sabemos aquí. La precariedad existe y hay que atacarla. Me preocupa porque nuestra marca europea es el modelo social, es decir, Europa es ese lugar donde, en definitiva, pues a todo trabajo se le acompaña de protección social, y parece que estemos empeñados en Europa ahora mismo en una agenda donde estemos debilitando eso, no solo porque no hay comprometida ninguna directiva nueva social, sino porque tampoco, creo que se ha dicho también aquí, tampoco hay presupuesto social que refuerce la agenda, la que podemos tener en marcha y la que podríamos comprometer. Y es increíble porque el modelo, bueno, el paradigma español en Europa, en lo que yo sé, se toman en cuenta las buenas prácticas europeas. España lleva ya varios años a la cabeza en crecimiento económico, no solo este año. Y parece que las previsiones del FMI lo siguen situando a la cabeza en los próximos años. Y lo que ha hecho, lo ha explicado Joaquín perfectamente, es exactamente romper el paradigma económico de explotación de la fuerza de trabajo. Eso no produce mayores beneficios económicos. Pero no solo porque España lo demuestra, es que hace pocos años se dio un premio Nobel precisamente a Daron Acemoglu, a ver si lo digo bien, precisamente por desarrollar esas teorías. O sea, y es un premio Nobel. Y no solo, está Mariana Mazzucato, está Damon Silver, que alzan la voz en la misma línea, porque cada vez es más evidente. Por tanto, ¿hacia dónde va Europa? Es lo que yo digo. ¿Dónde queremos situarnos? ¿Con quién queremos competir? Es que en algún momento se ha pensado dar la vuelta a nuestros tratados fundacionales y abandonar una línea que teníamos que era muy potente y que ha producido, es evidente, ha producido mucho crecimiento en Europa, mucha solidez y mucha solidaridad y cohesión en nuestro continente. Queremos romper eso. ¿Hacia dónde vamos? Porque parece que ese modelo sea el que nos apliquen nuestros enemigos, que hoy por hoy, en la situación que tenemos geopolítica, geoestratégica, evidentemente nuestros enemigos querrían acabar con nuestro modelo, pero lo que no tiene sentido es que lo hagamos nosotros mismos desde dentro. No tiene sentido con ejemplos como el de España, por ejemplo, el país a la cabeza en crecimiento desde varios años y en varios años siguientes. Y termino porque hay un aspecto que, de todos los aspectos que se han destacado, José Antonio ha hablado también de la importante diferencia con la política de migración, algo que realmente yo tengo que decir aquí, me parece lamentable. La política migratoria europea, lamentable. A mí realmente el último reglamento me avergüenza, lo tengo que decir porque lo pienso tal cual. Pero en España también, en paralelo a todas esas reformas de mercado laboral que se han hecho, a atacar la precariedad, reforzar la negociación colectiva, el diálogo social y el acuerdo con los agentes sociales, también se ha desarrollado una agenda en paralelo muy importante sobre el desarrollo de la igualdad. Lo que viene a decir es que sin igualdad, desde luego, no hay progreso, se demuestra. Y eso forma también, de manera importante, es una parte muy importante de las condiciones de trabajo. No solo la igualdad entre hombres y mujeres, la igualdad salarial, etcétera, sino también la igualdad en aspectos como la política de igualdad LGTBIQ en los centros de trabajo, donde España ha desarrollado una agenda muy potente que hoy por hoy hace que en el 61% de los convenios colectivos españoles haya protocolos contra el acoso, violencia y discriminación de las personas LGTBI en los centros de trabajo. En definitiva, es un paquete completo que lo que dice es que España apuesta fuertemente por el modelo social, pero lo hace Europa. ¿En dónde estamos? ¿Y dónde vamos a estar? Que esa es mi preocupación. Gracias.
Thank you very much. And Florian is the last speaker.
Thank you so much. Well, Mr. Olson, you have mentioned that this document was written with the social partners. Well, for me, this should be the norm when we are discussing about documents and laws which are dealing with labor movement and labor market. This should be the norm. This should not be the exception. So I'm delighted that it was a meaningful exercise, but let's continue to do it. Also, my point of view is that since we have a commissioner for the people, of the people, that commissioner should be here with us to discuss what we are discussing right now. This, perhaps I'm too optimistic, but I have 24 years experience in the labor movement, and since you have the moral duty to discuss with the people, well, we are representing the people. Then, let's come back to the quality jobs roadmap. We need standards for consultation. It is missing this concrete aspects of consultation, since participation and democracy are part of the main pillar of the European Union. So from my point of view, we need binding rules for meaningful consultation, which Mr. Mozzato should know are missing in countries such as Romania. Then how we can implement Green Deal without having sectorial contracts. Do you know how many we have in Romania? I'm ashamed to say it. We have seven. How we can implement this how we can implement Green Deal without having collective labor contract at a sectorial level. So this is not being touched by the roadmap. Then indicators have been mentioned, and Cinzia was right. We need standards for quality jobs. We have standards for environment and for other aspects, but we don't have a standard for quality jobs. We are struggling to see what does it mean. And we have, in the same time, we have in-work poverty for how many years? It is too much to ask for correlating salaries with inflation or with purchasing power. It's not. We just have to want this together. Let's do it. Otherwise, some countries, especially from the East, they are already mistrusting the EU project. You lose them. It's your responsibility not to lose those people. It's my responsibility to make them believe that EU is the right place. Give me some tools to do it. Then, the right to stay. It is being mentioned in the quality, in the communication. What does it mean in relation with quality jobs? Because what I'm seeing right now, a country which has a border with Ukraine, and in some cases, the far right is saying that we are speaking much more of Ukraine than we are speaking of Romanian workers, for example. Well, what does it mean, the right to stay? Because I'm seeing communities which are being, or the workers are moving in other countries just to have a job, not to follow their dreams, just to have a job. So touching the right to stay, it's good in the document. But for me, the document is missing a lot of concrete aspects. I hope that in the Quality Jobs Act, those aspects will be clearly mentioned as a responsibility, not necessarily a moral, but a formal one, of the DG in which you are representing. And I will give you another example. A country like Romania, with 14% allocated for the social objectives in the next MFF, what should buy first? Should consolidate labor inspection? Should buy missiles? Should invest in quality jobs? Tell me. I will tell you what will happen. They will buy missiles. Why? Because it's easier. And those people will go in Spain, will go in France, will go in Germany, and a country which is part of the EU will be left over. It is your responsibility and my responsibility to be to offer something concrete to those people. How we can do it? Well, let's use European semester. Because from my point of view, European semester should guide the budget or the future investment in the social aspect, preventing the reallocating of the budget towards defense. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You can see that it's a topic where we are emotional and very much engaged. Given the time, I would kindly ask the panelists to limit with their reflections up to 5 minutes. And let's start, Claude, from your side.
Merci, Lucie. Quelques éléments. Un, sur les migrants, tout à fait d'accord à ce qui a été dit, c'est important, mais plus globalement, et c'est un élément que j'ai introduit dans le draft que j'ai proposé, c'est d'avoir une attention particulière pour l'ensemble des publics éloignés de l'emploi, pour l'ensemble des publics avec des difficultés. Je pense notamment par rapport aux personnes handicapées. Les personnes handicapées, qualité de l'emploi, ça veut dire qu'il faut mettre en place des mesures, qu'il faut une prévention particulière, qu'il faut des accompagnements de carrière, etc. Donc tous ces éléments-là, pour moi, doivent faire partie, parce qu'on ne peut pas avancer effectivement sur une qualité de l'emploi qui ne serait qualité de l'emploi que pour certains et pas pour les autres. Je pense que ça, en tous les cas, c'est ce que, comme rapporteur, je vais essayer d'obtenir. Je pense que ce sont des éléments sur lesquels on devrait pouvoir avoir du consensus. Sur le fait de ne pas réglementer ou les disparités dans l'état du dialogue social, et c'est surtout un questionnement que j'envoie aux employeurs, tout à fait honnêtement. Je pense que les entreprises ont intérêt à avoir plus d'égalité, plus d'équité, tout simplement parce que c'est là-dessus que se construit une forme de concurrence qui est déloyale, mais qui est destructrice au niveau de la société, au niveau de la cohésion sociale, parce que c'est une forme de course au moins-disant social qui permet d'être plus compétitif. Et ça, je pense que ni les travailleurs, ni les entreprises ne peuvent se permettre en Europe ce genre de jeu, entre guillemets. La question du genre, c'est une question, mais j'avais déjà entendu Sophia, donc je n'ai rien introduit ça dans le projet, mais qui doit être transversal. C'est-à-dire qu'on ne doit pas avoir dans le Future Quality Job Act un paragraphe sur le genre. Non, ça doit parcourir l'ensemble des éléments, parce que ce sont des problématiques qui percolent dans l'ensemble de l'ensemble des choses, et on ne peut pas imaginer non plus l'amélioration de la qualité du travail sans cela. Je voudrais aussi revenir sur la question de la compétitivité. Et donc, je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, oui, nous sommes favorables à la compétitivité. Mais qu'est-ce que l'on met derrière ce mot-là? Quels sont les facteurs qui font en sorte que notre économie, que nos entreprises sont compétitives? Oui, c'est effectivement le coût salarial, c'est un élément. Les réglementations, si elles ont un coût, je dis bien si elles ont un coût, c'est un élément. Mais la recherche et développement, c'est aussi un élément, probablement le plus important. Parce qu'on peut, je vais prendre un exemple qui peut paraître idiot, mais on peut demain, avec des salaires de quasi 0 € fabriquer des sabots. Si personne n'a plus envie de porter des sabots, ben ça ne sert à rien et ça ne nous rendra pas compétitifs. Je prends un exemple absurde, mais je pourrais vous le montrer dans des exemples beaucoup moins absurdes de choses qui se passent au niveau de l'économie. C'est la formation. Je reviens sur cet élément parce qu'il est essentiel. Et on a eu des avis ici au Comité économique et social sur la formation où les employeurs ont eu un discours très clair, je trouve, sur l'importance. Donc, pourquoi se bloquer sur cet élément d'imaginer que parce qu'il y a un droit, ça va faire en sorte qu'il va y avoir une incapacité de gérer la formation au niveau des entreprises? Je pense que ce sont des choses tout à fait gérables. Dernier élément sur lesquels je voudrais avant-dernier élément sur lesquels je voudrais intervenir, c'est la stratégie. Je parle les cartes sur table, j'ai l'habitude d'essayer de faire comme ça en tous les cas. L'enjeu pour nous et l'enjeu pour moi en tous les cas au niveau de notre comité, je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, c'est d'arriver à, allez, je ne me fais pas d'illusions, on aura des divergences et on aura des compromis sur certains éléments, mais d'avoir le minimum de compromis possible pour rester crédible comme comité, parce que l'enjeu est important. Je trouve que l'initiative qui a été prise par la Commission doit pouvoir suivre son cours et devenir quelque chose. Donc on a vraiment intérêt de travailler, je pense, et je fais le pari en tous les cas que nous en avons la capacité de passer au-dessus de certaines divergences qui sont les nôtres habituellement. Dernière chose que je voudrais, et je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, mais very short, c'est très important, je l'ai dit mais je le répète, c'est un enjeu de démocratie. Si on ne veut pas conduire une fragmentation sociale qui abîmera le projet européen et la démocratie dans l'Union européenne, eh bien on doit donner une réponse en termes de qualité du travail. Et à la Commission, faites gaffe, j'ai envie de vous dire les amis, ne créons pas d'attentes qui n'auront pas des résultats sur le terrain, parce que dans la société, dans la vie de tous les jours, dans les entreprises, l'attente est forte.
Thank you very much. Estelle, it's your turn. 5 minutes.
Voilà.
5.
D'abord, sur les travailleurs migrants, enfin, qu'on va quand même appeler par leur nom, c'est-à-dire effectivement des travailleurs sans papier. On est particulièrement admiratif effectivement de la politique menée en Espagne, la seule au niveau européen, pour régulariser ces travailleurs qui sont là, qui travaillent et effectivement sans droit au jour d'aujourd'hui. Donc c'est alors que, bah, voilà, au contraire, la directive retour est une horreur en tant que telle. Juste quand même dire que dans le volet subcontracting, c'est un des éléments, justement, c'est d'éviter les phénomènes d'exploitation à travers les chaînes de sous-traitance. Mais c'est peu. Et alors, par contre, il y a une autre initiative qui peut inquiéter aussi, c'est le fameux talent pool. Donc, puisque l'Europe va maintenant avoir aussi un règlement pour mettre en œuvre un mécanisme qu'on appelle le talent pool pour permettre de faire venir des ressortissants par voie légale, des ressortissants d'États tiers. Alors, on a évidemment beaucoup de préoccupations, pas m'étendre sur le sujet, sinon j'explose déjà mes 5 minutes, mais voilà, peut débattre. Alors, effectivement, sur la question de... allez, non, je vais peut-être prendre sur risques psychosociaux. Quelle est la position de Business Europe? Donc, voilà, sur risques psychosociaux, ils sont très clairement contre. Moi, j'entends qu'ils veulent négocier, mais ce n'est pas ce que j'entends du tout chez nous. Parce que pour eux, le problème des risques psychosociaux, c'est lié uniquement aux aspects individuels du travailleur, ce qui est évidemment faux. Donc on veut aussi des approches qui soient collectives, et notamment sur la question de la prévention, qui prendra en compte évidemment la réalité, la spécificité des entreprises, de certaines catégories de travailleurs, notamment les front office par rapport d'autres. Donc voilà, mais c'est vraiment le principal obstacle. Donc tout à fait d'accord avec le fait que Eurofund a une très claire définition avec, je pense, 6 aspects de ce qu'on appelle, en tout cas 6 dimensions de ce qu'on appelle la qualité de l'emploi, donc ou l'emploi de qualité. Donc on doit s'y accrocher. Sur ce que Sophia disait sur effectivement les investissements. Alors autant, donc rapport Draghi, définition de la compétitivité, cherchez-la, vous ne la trouverez pas. Hein, et donc chacun l'interprète comme il veut. Malheureusement, quand on parle de compétitivité, on est plus souvent, comme ça a été dit, sur la compétitivité coût que sur la compétitivité plus avec sa dimension notamment innovation, investissement dans les infrastructures. Et donc juste rappeler quand même, ça vaut la peine de regarder le rapport Draghi, s'il ne définit pas la compétitivité, il cite peut-être une 20aine de fois la question de la simplification. Et là on sent que l'Europe, Business Europe et les autres se prennent à bras le corps. Hein. D'ailleurs, ce n'est pas simplification, c'est dérégulation. Mais je pense qu'il y a 800 fois le mot investissement. Et là, voilà, MFF, on aura peut-être des débats parce que je vais exploser mon temps de travail, mon temps de parole, mais là, on a beaucoup de préoccupations parce que non seulement pas de nouveaux investissements, mais une mise en danger terrible du Fonds social européen qui n'a plus de ligne dédicacée. Donc voilà, c'est notamment des emplois, des politiques de l'emploi, des politiques de lutte contre la pauvreté, qui sont vraiment à travers ce Fonds social européen en grand danger. Le genre, ben oui, on espère que la Commission, dans son Quality Job Act, va arriver avec une transversalité du genre, tout comme il doit y avoir une transversalité aussi du collective bargaining dans la proposition. En tout cas, nous, on le fait. On l'a fait à travers tous nos rapports, transversalité du genre. Et alors, effectivement, pauvreté des travailleurs, c'est une réalité, mais donc c'est pour ça qu'il faut vraiment aller beaucoup plus loin aussi sur la mise en œuvre de la directive sur les salaires minimums. Pour le moment, on n'y est pas dans beaucoup d'États membres. Et on n'y est pas non plus, et ça a été souligné, sur les 80% de taux de couverture de la négociation collective. Donc là, il faut effectivement des plans d'action dans les États membres, mais là aussi, peut-être, comme ça a été dit, avoir des objectifs un peu plus contraignants, voire peut-être des sanctions lorsque ce n'est pas respecté. Merci. Je dois vous laisser. Sorry.
I know that you are enthusiastic about it. All of us are enthusiastic about it, but we need to give a fair chance also to the others.
No, I have to leave.
You have to leave?
Yeah.
You were so disciplined.
No, sorry.
Good as usual, but disciplined. Thank you very much. Hope to welcome you again, at some point. Thank you very much. Mr. Olsen, you're up to 5 minutes. Reflection.
Thank you, and thank you very much for your inputs. I think this is it's a lot of investment from the side of you and the workers group, and I'm confident and very happy that Claude Rollin will lead this work, and so that, because I think the input from your side will be very important, and you have made a lot of important points. I will not go into detail. Maybe I should just, I think it's important to put our work into perspective, though. I mean, if you look at what Executive Vice President Minsato has done only in the employment area, she was part of the first 100 days with the Union of Skills. She has presented this roadmap that we've discussed, and this year we are doing, in a few weeks, the anti-poverty package. We are then producing the fair mobility package and then the act. So this is a very, very ambitious agenda. So I just to disperse any feeling of inaction or that we're only focusing on competitiveness, I think it's important to emphasize all this work that is very important, and it's sometimes uphill, but I think there's a lot of commitment there. And from our Romanian colleagues, thank you very much. I had the pleasure of managing the social fund in Romania for 7 years. I used to meet the social partners for breakfast, so I know the frustrations and feelings, and there's a lot of work to do. And it's, of course, extremely important that the social spending gets a big role, which is something that I think we all agree here, that I know that Roxana stands very strongly for, but that will also be a very strong battle in the year, in the coming months, that will be important to do. So again, I'm looking very much forward to your future inputs in this process, and thank you already.
Thank you very much. Laura, you're up to 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, and I will try to go to the essential elements. So first of all, in terms of the definitions of quality jobs, we do have a number of tools. I think indeed the Eurofund one is an important one. We have an ETUC definition as well. The only point for the Eurofund definition, and they know because we have expressed this point to them in various occasions, is the absence of the reference to collective bargaining or trade union representation there. And so this is, if we want to use that definition, that has to be added indeed. And they say this is a tool, not an objective, but this is essential. As Joachim was saying, the role of trade unions and collective bargaining. EMCO did an opinion, EMCO SPC, on the dimensions of quality jobs, which is interesting and good as well, solid, with collective bargaining in it. Of course, also the ETUC definition is wonderful, so we can use that as well. But jokes apart, indeed, we do have the tools that can be used to assess what is a quality jobs, or to help us in making an assessment of whether things are going in the right direction or not. And indeed, for the Quality Jobs Act, we need the minimum standards, we need the binding minimum standards on the elements that we mentioned before, telework, right to disconnect, AI at work. We did it with platform. There is no reason why the other sectors shouldn't be covered, they shouldn't be protected on psychosocial risks. And here as well, the Commission also took the engagement to deal with gender-based violence and harassment at the workplace. This is very important as well. And also the climate change, climate-related challenges at workplace and risks, including maximum minimum temperatures at work. That is very important as well. We see every summer a lot of deaths within workers because of the absence of regulation of those aspects, and subcontracting and labour intermediaries. And I think there, in particular for subcontracting and labour intermediaries, this is also dealing with the element that José Antonio and Marie Carmen were also raising on the need to better protect migrant workers, because I know that Estelle, they went there, I think, a couple of weeks ago. The ETUC was there as well when we were in Borgo Mezzanone, in the southern part of Italy, in the shanty towns, and we know how many of those migrant and sans-papier workers are working in subcontractors of subcontractors without any protection and in full exploitation. So regulating subcontracting and labour intermediaries will also help us in dealing with those situations indeed. And then the issue of enforcement and collective bargaining. And this is really essential, and I wanted to also connect with the a point that Claude was making, because in order in this moment to protect also democracy itself, we need a democracy that is delivering better living and working conditions, because we need a democracy that delivers a social progress, which is what the European project must be about and was about and has been about. Otherwise, we create a big vulnerability that the enemies of democracy within and outside the European Union will be able to exploit. And then just a couple of replies to some of the elements raised in the intervention on the need to have strong trade unions that Cinzia mentioned, both in terms, that is essential, both in terms of the transposition of the minimum wage directive, collective bargaining, but also in the Quality Jobs Act, when we are talking about better enforcement, what measure could be more effective than ensuring that trade unions have access to workplaces, also digital access when the work is done in a digital manner. We have tried in the minimum wage directive, we can try it again here in the Quality Jobs Act. Then, indeed, some aspects were raised again on the issue of what elements should be included. The psychosocial risks are essential, and indeed the executive told us that also on that we want minimum binding standards. So this is what we are aiming for. And indeed, I would perhaps conclude with what. No, perhaps two final elements, sorry. One is the importance of training and the right to training. The first pillar of the European Pillar of Social Rights, still whose respect is not ensured in European legislation. So a key element, a just transition part of the Quality Jobs Act must be dealing with that. And finally, on the MFF, because we are speaking a lot about competitiveness, a lot about the importance of the social dimension, but then when we are undermining the European Social Fund, as the Commission proposal is doing, then we cannot be serious about speaking, and I'm sorry that Stefan has had to leave, about a strategy against poverty, because you cannot have a strategy against poverty and then undermine the European Social Fund. So we very much appreciate what the Parliament is trying to do to re-establish the ESF as a standalone budget tool with the same or more budget. And I conclude just by quoting Florian, because we indeed need all some tools that can allow us to go to working people and to say to them the European Union is a project that is delivering something for all working people. The Quality Jobs Act is a tool that we have at our disposal. We need now to continue to put pressure to get something meaningful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Joachim, back to you. We are privileged. You've got 6 to 7 minutes.
Muchas gracias. Qué privilegio. Bueno, gracias a todas y a todos por este apasionante debate. Yo creo que este es el motor y la locomotora de construcción de una Europa para los trabajadores y con derechos sociales. La colega italiana Cinzia decía una cosa que me ha parecido muy importante y que me ha hecho reflexionar. Ella decía, no hay que tener miedo a la legislación. Pero es curioso cómo en Europa, a fuerza de repetir una cosa, parece convertirse en una verdad. Si es que Europa tiene un gran déficit de legislación social. Estamos lejísimos. No hay muchas normas, hay muy pocas normas sociales. No regulamos los despidos individuales, no regulamos el derecho individual a la formación, no regulamos el derecho de desconexión, no regulamos la subcontratación, no hay un marco para la democracia en la empresa, no hay un marco para la inversión pública, no regulamos la inteligencia artificial y sus consecuencias laborales. Estamos muy lejos de hacer un verdadero derecho de transparencia algorítmica. Es decir, el modelo legislativo social europeo no solo no es muy aparatoso, sino que es muy pequeño. Es que nuestra Europa se caracteriza precisamente por un gran déficit de legislación social. Tenemos que abundar en más legislación social y no restar. Por eso el debate de la simplificación es realmente llamativo. cuando todavía no hemos logrado construir un modelo social europeo, ya estamos pensando en recortarlo. Y esto, sinceramente, a mi juicio, es inadmisible. Y por eso, en realidad, necesitamos mucha mejor y más legislación social que lleve a cabo la regulación de un verdadero modelo laboral europeo. Porque si realmente fuera cierto que tenemos tantas decenas de legislaciones, no sería posible, como decía el colega rumano, que en Europa el dumping social sea una estrategia de funcionamiento de las empresas cotidiana. Es decir, que la incapacidad de nuestras normas y nuestras directivas haga que todavía haya ventajas competitivas basadas sobre el precio de trabajo para radicar empresas en unos lugares de Europa o en otros distintos. O que haya presión para que unos trabajadores vayan a trabajar a otros lugares en lugar de otros, ¿no? En definitiva, lo que quiero decir es que no hay mucha legislación social, hay poca legislación social y necesitamos más para que Europa sea un mercado no solo para las empresas, sino un lugar donde los trabajadores estén bien tratados. Por lo tanto, esta es una falsa afirmación que impugna lo que todos sabemos, el verdadero déficit social de la construcción europea. Realmente, la hoja de ruta hacia los empleos de calidad es una buena noticia, es una magnífica noticia que en este momento de apatía europea respecto de lo social haya una iniciativa de este tipo. Pero yo estoy muy de acuerdo con lo que decía el colega ponente, siempre que no levantemos falsas expectativas. No puede ser que todo esto acabe en una especie de discurso de que necesitamos empleos de calidad sin garantizar esos empleos de calidad. No puede ser que todo esto acabe en decir que hay que vigilar la subcontratación sin vigilar la subcontratación. O no puede ser que todo esto acabe diciendo que los riesgos psicosociales son cada vez más alarmantes en Europa, pero que no haya una directiva de riesgos psicosociales. Y este yo creo que es un peligro que tenemos que intentar conjurar entre todos. O no podemos, y estoy muy de acuerdo con lo que decía José Antonio y Mari Carmen, decir que la calidad del trabajo es solo para unos pocos, pero que millones de trabajadores extranjeros que todos los días trabajan con nosotros lo tienen que hacer irregularmente invisibles con sus derechos no reconocidos. Yo creo, y sinceramente no me gustaría ser especialmente enfático o exagerado, pero cuando Europa abandona lo social, la propia identidad europea es la que se pone en riesgo. Y ya lo conocemos, es que lo sabemos, es que lo hemos visto. Es que hemos visto que el giro de la desregulación, la austeridad, el giro de la Europa solo para construir los mercados, hemos visto que el giro en aquellos terribles años de la crisis financiera, donde Europa era solo un Estado 28, en ese giro Europa estuvo a punto de perder su identidad y estuvo a punto de perderse a sí misma. Europa se ganó la antipatía de centenares de miles de trabajadores que vieron en Europa un problema y no vieron una solución. Esa Europa, y lo digo sinceramente, creo que la recuperamos, creo que la hemos recuperado. Esa Europa fue la que nadie olvidará que salvó a muchos trabajadores y trabajadoras de la pandemia. Fue la Europa que, a través del Fondo Social Europeo, consiguió equilibrar buena parte de nuestros desequilibrios, de nuestros déficits de igualdad. Es decir, que hay una Europa que ha construido una ciudadanía europea y en la que hay una creencia de que es útil, de que sirve a las mayorías y que no constituye un espacio empresarial sofisticado, sino una forma de vivir en el mundo, de vivir con derechos, de vivir con justicia social, de vivir con igualdad, de vivir con trabajo decente, de vivir con feminismo y de vivir haciendo frente a un planeta que tiene que ser sostenible. Esa Europa no puede de nuevo dejarse de lado en favor de una idea que nunca es cierta, que es que el crecimiento empresarial, la competitividad sin barreras, el dumping social van a conseguir que Europa sea un actor importante en el escenario geopolítico simplemente reduciendo sus derechos. No. Europa solo será si consigue garantizar los derechos a la vez que es competitiva. Y claro, tenemos que recuperar muchos elementos, no solo una legislación social avanzada, no solo garantizar el empleo de calidad. Creo que además no podemos dejar que la inteligencia artificial, los algoritmos, estén en manos de los grandes tecnooligarcas, de que sea Estados Unidos y Asia los que gobiernen el sistema tecnológico. Hagamos inversión pública, hagamos una IA que tenga un horizonte social, protejamos realmente a las empresas europeas de su invasión o colonización por la tecnología norteamericana o asiática a través de estimular verdaderos proyectos industriales y empresariales que solo pueden ser pensados en términos de garantía de trabajo decente. Porque, insisto, lo hablaba antes con la presidencia, cuando alguien quiere atacar un modelo, nunca lo hace frontalmente. Busca excusas, caminos recovecos. Habla de simplificación para no decir desregulación. Habla de modernización para no decir regresión. O habla de eliminar trabas burocráticas para acabar con derechos laborales. Los derechos laborales no son burocracia, los sindicatos no son trabas regulatorias y el espacio social europeo no es un impedimento, sino una ventaja. Entonces necesitamos una Europa más social, más pacifista y más feminista. Y creo que en encuentros como esto, aunque sea de la mano de algo tan importante como trabajos de calidad, es como se puede llegar a construir esa Europa solidaria basada en la justicia social en la que todas y todos creemos y que creo que es la única Europa posible, porque el resto solo alimentará un fantasma. Lo decía también el colega, el de la ultraderecha, el del populismo de derechas que considera que Europa es una trampa burocrática que no sirve a sus ciudadanos y a sus ciudadanas. Y eso es mentira. Europa es el proyecto civilizatorio seguramente más ambicioso basado en el respeto a los derechos sociales y que cree que el poder reside sobre todo en los ciudadanos y en concreto en los ciudadanos y en las ciudadanas que trabajan diariamente para levantar este continente. Y con eso, presidenta, muchas gracias por la invitación. Ha sido un gusto y hasta otra ocasión.
Thank you very much. Actually, let me thank all the panelists in this panel. I mean, I'm really happy we are going this way and can just fully subscribe to what Joachim just said. Social and workers' rights are not a cost. It's the advantage, it's the competitive advantage. And in a way, we should take competitiveness as a competitiveness also of workers and employees. And for me, competitiveness should be competitiveness of the whole society, which is the concept we should be working on. And that would slightly change, you know, the perception just going to austerity, cutting and deregulating. So thank you very much, all of you. And we are coming to the last panel of today, basically focusing on addressing the investment and innovation deficit, a new social contract, where I would like to invite the last two speakers, Janine Vallée and Andrew Watt, to come to the podium so that we can actually complete the debates we are having. So, without any further delay, you can see from the program that we are starting with a keynote address by Enrico Letta, the president of the Institute Jacques Delors and former Prime Minister of Italy, with a video message. Then we've got a remote speaker, and then we've got Andrew, who is here on the spot. So let's start with Enrico Letta.
Dear friends, dear Esther, dear Lucie, it's a great pleasure for me to have the possibility to attend this event and to leave you with some words related to my experience in these 2 years around the single market, around the work on the single market, around the mission on how to strengthen European competitiveness and to make possible for us, for the European Union, for the European countries, stopping this decline that on the industrial side and on many other competitiveness side is having Europe. And it's, for me, it's a big mission that I tried to have in mind when I started this work on the integration of the single market. I started having in mind the advice that Jacques Delors gave me. I met him 3 months before he passed away, and I was starting this work the European Council tasked me to do, and he told me that the single market is the single market of the people. So please meet the people, meet the social partners, go everywhere in Europe, in the member states. Do not lock yourself in Brussels, in the Berlaymont, to write this report. And he told me also the single market will be successful only if the European Union will be able to renewal and to relaunch the way in which, in the past, through the cohesion policy, the structural funds, the European Union was able to address the cleavages, the gaps between territories, between the different social part of our society. He told me clearly the single market without the work to address inequalities can risk to become a problem at European level. I start from here by telling you that my work has been always a work in strong cooperation with social partners. Social dialogue is absolutely fundamental. I think we have to relaunch it. I saw in these last months and years in which I worked at European level on this single market report, I saw a social dialogue that is really weakening and weakening. Social dialogue sometimes is a sort of fake social dialogue. We need substantial social dialogue, as it happened in Val d'Uchesse 40 years ago. It was not by chance the first step of Jacques Delors' adventure. It was in January 86. It started a few weeks before, and the first signal was through the social dialogue, Val d'Uchesse process, and so on. We have to relaunch it, and we have to make it substantial for 2 main reasons. The first reason is the fact that we are lagging behind, we are losing ground, and we have to relaunch competitiveness. Jobs are there if Europe is competitive. We have not to forget this fundamental point. And to have jobs, we need a European Union competitive, a European Union innovative, a European Union able not to be too bureaucratic, a European Union that can overcome borders, avoid fragmentation, avoid duplication. This is fundamental. And this is first big mission of One Europe, One Market Act, this work that the European Council and the European Commission started in link with the report. And the second and fundamental point is everything has to be done considering the centrality of the people. Person at the center, people at the center. Work is for the people. And it is fundamental that what we can do together is related to a good equilibrium between these 2 aspects. This is why in the report I put some aspects related to fifth freedom, boost of innovation, the three main fields, financial markets, energy, connectivity, where because of the fragmentation we are sending jobs out of Europe. The possibility to integrate these three fields means re-attracting investments and re-attracting jobs in Europe, creating good jobs, quality jobs. That is, I think, our main mission. And the same is for the 28 regime, with all the points that von der Leyen also clearly mentioned when she launched the 28 regime, a 28 regime that can help the economic system without weakening any workers' rights. And this is exactly the way in which I think the 28 regime and the way in which I put the 28 regime in the report. Now, EU Inc., I think it's first good proposal. We have to continue in that direction because I'm sure that EU Inc. will bring a lot of jobs if we are able to build up EU Inc. in the correct way. I repeat, protecting all workers' rights as it is done in the European treaties and working to help companies, to help entrepreneurial spirits to be more dynamic, more innovative, to work in a more simple environment, to be faster. I think one great idea is for EU Inc. is exactly the possibility to be fast in the creation of a company and then in the creation of jobs. I think that we have all to work to help this dynamism and the possibility for the European institutions today to show that they can modernize Europe. They can create new tools that can help entrepreneurs, workers to be more dynamic and to boost growth. We need growth in Europe. We need quality jobs. We need to address inequalities. All these missions needs big changes. We are not to be considered the defender of the statu quo. The statu quo is not a good thing. The statu quo means decline in Europe. And decline means inequalities, and decline means unemployment. Decline means young Europeans leaving Europe to get opportunities out of Europe. No, I'm totally against defending the present declining situation of Europe. I defend European values and European treaties, but I try to push reforms that can help growth, competitiveness, and the creation of quality jobs. And I'm sure that we are all working in the same direction. I thank you very much because I had in the last months and years a fantastic cooperation. I learned a lot speaking with you, learning what you told me, what you taught me, and I think now we have to deliver and we have to be fast in delivering. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Enrico Letta. It's a pity you could not have been with us this morning for the debates on the 28th regime, but also this afternoon. No, would have been really interesting, especially after this address. But without any further, I would like to turn to Janine Vallet, the head of the GAP's Geo-Economic Program and German Council of the Foreign Relations. Online? Okay, could we...
Can you hear me well?
Yes. And we can even see you, so that's brilliant. Thanks for accepting our invitation. So let's go for it for 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, and sorry I cannot be with you in person. It's an honor to speak after Prime Minister Letta, but what I'm going to say today may not be what he would have liked to hear. In particular, because I think the European Union is spending a whole lot of time discussing about the Letta report and the prospect for single market integration, discussing the Draghi report in all the areas where there needs to be structural reforms and integration of markets. And I tend to think that these issues, on the whole, are not the central issues to Europe's competitiveness. And if I may, I would like to posit that I think the three dominant issues are the issues that we don't talk about enough and that we are actually experiencing now. And I think, to me, the first is the question of energy prices and energy price volatility. I think we've discovered in 2022 with the war of aggression in Ukraine that we were extremely dependent on foreign energy sources, in particular on Russia. We've spent a lot of time over the last 4 years weaning away of dependency from Russia, but creating new dependencies on the Gulf and on the United States. And I think we're discovering today that these new dependencies, keep us vulnerable. I believe that the first order of business for Europe is to fix the cost of energy and to fix the price volatility of energy, which is a fundamental hurdle to industrial competitiveness. And I think this is the issue that should be the prime focus of the European Union, in which, sadly, it is not. We are, still, 4 years after the Repower EU was announced, waiting for major interconnections in Europe, major infrastructure investments in the energy sector, and we are still nearly 750 billion after NGEU was announced in 2020, short of major investments to be realized in the energy transition across Europe. I hope that the current war in Iran, and I hope that the current package to be announced by the Commission in the coming days will put the issue of energy prices back at the heart of the European economic agenda, because I think this is really central. I think the second key issue we need to face is how to deal with Chinese competition. I think we have moved over the last 5 years, in particular, this accelerated since COVID, from a world where China was Europe's biggest customer to a world where China is Europe's biggest competitor, and in particular, in key industries that I'm thinking of the auto industry, first and foremost. The European Union has been discussing for the last few months the Industry Accelerator Act, and has considered this a very important piece of legislation to deal with Chinese excess capacity. I am afraid that the current proposal by the European Commission doesn't meet the mark. It is trying to create a very timid avenue for local content rules. I think the decision that was made to have a very broad definition of local content rules that essentially includes all of Europe's free trading partners, as well as all of the parties to the public procurement agreement of the WTO, has entirely killed the notion of local content rules that would favor made in Europe. I think this was a profound mistake. I think the European Union is still shy of creating a framework for a mandatory joint venture from Chinese firms to create reversed technology transfer, to mandate a certain amount of European employment, and to ensure both sustainability as well as social standards in these joint venture agreements. I think this is a big failing in the current IIA proposal, and I hope it can be fixed in the legislative process. Finally, the IIA does not discuss at all the question of tariffs. As you know, the European Union has agreed to EV tariffs 18 months ago. We are in fact starting to undo quietly these tariffs. Volkswagen has asked for a price undertaking in December of last year it has been granted in February, and in keeping with these guidelines, it is very likely that in the coming weeks and months, more Chinese car makers will get quotas to export cars, EVs to Europe without paying the tariff. So we're basically dismantling our trade protections without having created the right incentives for Chinese investments in Europe. And I think by doing so, we are exposing tremendously the European industry, the European car industry first and foremost, but more broadly, the European industry that is exposed to Chinese competition. I think this is the second most urgent matter, and something that I believe the current legislative process does not allow us to deal with sufficiently rapidly. Finally, I think the last issue, which I view as critical for Europe's long-term economic potential, has to do with aging. And I think there's several ways to think about the issue. One is to limit this debate to a debate around the employment rate, and in particular, the employment rate of women or older people. But I think another issue or another way of dealing with it is to view it as fundamentally a question of immigration, and of basically making the European continent attractive to immigration, both to highly skilled immigration, but also to low skilled immigration, because given our demographic dynamics, we will need both. There are very few countries in Europe that have understood that. Spain is probably one of them. We had some examples of that earlier in the discussion. I tend to think this is an issue that should be brought to the heart of the European conversation. Given the freedom of movement, Europe needs to have a fairly coherent and cohesive immigration policy. And I think the current approach that has been followed over the last decade, which has tended to limit as much as possible immigration flow, is entirely contradictory with our economic situation. Europe does need today, and will need even more tomorrow, vast amounts of immigration, unless we can do something very radical very quickly about our natality rate. My sense is that it's very unlikely that it will do something very rapid and radical on natality rate. And so we will be relying on immigration if we want to continue to be able to finance our economy and our social model. And so I think that's the third priority in order of business, and something that is not given enough attention, or if it is, it's only in the framework of limiting immigration, which is entirely against the benefit of the European economy. And I will end here, and I'm very happy to enjoy the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for highlighting other elements than those until now debated. Andrew, you and ETUC's perspective on the debated issues. The floor is yours.
Yes, thanks, Lucy. Thanks very much for the invitation. So I can echo Shaheen. It's an honor to speak after Enrico Letta, and indeed also after Shaheen himself. So we didn't compare notes, but I'm going to cover some of the issues that he's also covered with a slightly different angle, because there was the emphasis in the title was about a new social contract. So I'm going to try and put things in the framework of what I see as a new social contract. So here's my takeaways. It's late in the day, in case you're losing concentration straight away. There is a serious innovation and investment deficit in Europe. I don't think we should try and pretend that we don't have a problem there. So I'm a little bit closer then maybe to Draghi and Letta than Shaheen is. I do believe there is a potential for a new social contract. I think it's actually the best way, if we can achieve it, in the spirit of El Duces, as Enrico Letta mentioned, to address the problems we have. And I'll give you here 7 areas. I think there are lots more areas we could involve, but I think I focus on 7 areas where I believe we could reach agreement between social partners and national and European level policymakers, which will require some movement on all sides. And I'll probably say some things in this audience which may also be a little bit uncomfortable, but I think all actors are going to need to move out of their comfort zone. So to start with the first point, I mean, I do think, to be short, not on the policy side so much, there I agree also with Shaheen, but in terms of the analysis of the structural problems facing Europe, I do think that the Draghi and Letta reports got a lot right. in particular, the fact that Europe has a productivity problem, and I want to focus mostly on that. So, quick entre parenthèses, there's this debate about competitiveness and productivity. I mean, a lot of people, I think also in this room, are uneasy with this word competitiveness. I think with one exception, and that's actually the Chinese exception that Shaheen mentioned. I don't think we, in the narrow sense, have a competitiveness problem, but we certainly have a productivity problem. So let's focus on that. Why do we have a productivity problem? Where do we see that? Well, we're lagging behind the US and China, as Draghi also said, and we are overinvested in older technologies and underinvested in new cutting-edge areas. This is absolutely a problem that we need to address. And productivity is vital for the trade union colleagues in the room. If we want to have collective bargaining, we need to have something to bargain over, right? So if we don't have productivity growth, there is essentially nothing also that the unions can bargain over. So we do need that. I have a point on demography as well, a bit like Shaheen's. You know, the maths is in a sense inescapable. No, the amount of goods and services that we can consume as a society depends on the product of the working hours that are put in and productivity, labour productivity per hour. And if we look at the demographic projections, that was a bit implicit in what Shaheen said. You know, we're looking at a 10% fall, making some assumptions about immigration there. In the size of the working age population in 25 years. 10% fall in the size of the working population over 25 years. That's serious. Shift in the ratio from 3 to 1 to 2 to 1. Right? So these are things we need to address. If we want to defend our social systems, if we want to maintain our living standards, we need to work on maximizing both the rate of productivity growth, which is what I'm going to focus on, and indeed address issues of labour market participation. So how do we get faster productivity growth? So what Draghi actually said, the previous speaker said this quite correctly, I think, in the report. We need to focus on investment because there are lots of other things that we can discuss, but actually getting more, what the economists call capital deepening, is necessary and vital for investment, and not a lot of the other things that are in the discussion. If we look at the different levels of investment, the different types of investment, we basically have the distinction between public investment and private investment. Public investment, we can look at the European level and the national level. If we look at the European level, basically we see that in contrast to all other developed economies, we essentially have very, very little at the European level in terms of public investment, and in particular no borrowing capacity. At national level, we have even less national level public investment than the supposedly neoliberal United States of America, right? So just to get a sense of where we are in terms of our public investment. We have economic governance rules that have been reformed and are better than they used to be, but they are still constraining our member state governments in the amount of public investment that they can do. If we look at private sector investment, which is actually more important quantitatively. No, let's not forget that. We do need to recognise also on the trade union side, I mean, investment is risky. Private sector actors are not going to invest unless they have a reasonable prospect of getting a return. If you ask, though, the employers, not so much the representatives, maybe, but the actual employers, what actually drives those animal spirits? What actually induces them to invest? Right? It's mostly about the prospect of having demand for the products that they're going to produce with this additional investment. Right? That's the key thing. Right? It's the key challenge for policymakers to stabilise expectations for the demand regarding the demand for the products that they want to produce, and that is. Clearly been a problem in Europe in the past. On top of that are coming two elements. I won't go into them in detail because Shaheen rightly mentioned them. The energy price shock and the threat to our industries coming from China. What is not really understandable or credible is the idea that a deregulation agenda is really noticeably going to induce European companies to invest. If you look at the Omnibook that the Business Europe put forward, there are things in there which I think we can discuss, right? It's not all totally unreasonable things, but just the whole idea that this is really going to, light a bonfire under European companies and start them investing is somewhat, to be frank, somewhat ridiculous. So if we take that as a sort of analysis of the situation we're in, what sort of contract could we imagine between national policymakers, European policymakers, and the representatives of capital and labour to sort things out? I mean, I present very quickly here seven elements. The first one, I think, in terms of economics, and really it should be in terms of politics as well, is a kind of no-brainer, right? That's a capacity at European level to borrow and invest in European public goods, right? And we've now got Draghi on board on this, we've got the ECB on board on this, we've got the Commission on board on this. Really, it's just recalcitrant member states, I think, that are blocking this necessary step. We have the United States busily subverting confidence in the dollar and in US treasuries, right? It's a golden opportunity to finally make this step to produce euro area safe assets, and at the moment Europe's not taking it. That would be the first step. Reform of the fiscal rules and some sort of Shaw-style mechanism to facilitate public spending and particularly public investment at the member state level. Here again, it's certain member states that are essentially blocking this. If the employers would drop their insistence on the need for deregulation and focus, for example, on this aspect, they would, I think, actually be acting in the interests of their members, because there's plenty of evidence out there that public investment is crowding in private investment and making that more profitable. Thirdly, we need to address the inflationary shock that's hitting us in a cooperative way. Again, lots could be said about this, and Shaheen mentioned this. You know, we have to face this shock, right? There will be losses, and people need to accept that. What we don't want to see is companies making, expanding their margins and making increased profits in this environment, leading to demands from the trade union side for compensatory wage increases, and that bringing on the ECB to say, okay, we need to have higher interest rates to block this inflationary process. That will really kill the European economy over the next 1, 2, 3 years if we go down that path. So that will be a vital step to get people around the table to avoid that, rein in price increases, and agree that we don't need interest rate hikes in the current environment. The fourth point, I'll be very quick because Shaheen went in quite some detail a bit about this. It's essentially about China. If we have a competitiveness issue, it's with respect to China, and he made a lot of points there, which I endorse, on a need to protect our industries from the Chinese competition, which is, again, long discussion, but completely off the scale at the moment, and that needs to be addressed. Fifth, we need to discuss the introduction of new technologies. If we want to have rapid productivity growth, we need to embrace the opportunities of digitalization and AI. And we all know that these opportunities come with very significant risks. Social risks, political risks, but also risks to workers, to working conditions, to workers' rights and job quality. And only through worker participation, collective bargaining, will we be able to introduce AI in a way that, and digital technologies, that gives us the productivity growth we need while ensuring quality jobs and taking workers' interests on board. Sixth, we need to recommit to the net zero agenda. I think, again, a bit implicit in what Shaheen also said, if anything positive is coming out of this total, I'll be careful with my words, disaster in the Middle East, it's hopefully a recognition that electrification and the use of renewables to generate electricity are really vital in our short-term interests, also vital in workers' interests, and they're not just some sort of abstract, a long-term agenda driven by elites. This is really vital in our interest. And I think, to be frank here in this room, I think some parts of the Labour movement have gone a little bit off track on this, and I hope this is a bit of a wake-up call that we really need to get back on that agenda. Last point, a social contract on labour market participation. Again, some difficult discussions to be had here, but we all need to be aware of the trade-offs that are implicit in this discussion about labour market participation. Again, a little bit implicit in what Shaheen said. Question of immigration, of course, is potentially very, very explosive one. I do believe we need to focus more also on our domestic labour supply, on the greater participation of women, for example, on the issues that in some countries we have large numbers of people on long-term sick leave, difficult discussions about retirement policies and stuff. We need to have an open discussion about that. The employers need to step up and address their issues of age discrimination, health and safety issues at the workplace, adapted workplaces for older workers, etc., etc. But that is an important part of the discussion. If we could get some sort of consensus across actors, some sort of, that could be the basis of a social contract, which I believe would really address some of the problems that Europe faces now and in the medium and longer term. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Also from Andrew, slightly different angle than we are used to. So I'm immediately opening the floor for comments, questions. I can see Jack, I can see Aurélie. Anyone else for the moment? Andrea. I can see Andrea. Okay, Jack, you can start.
Thank you, Lucy. Well, we certainly ended the meeting on a very high note, and I want to very much welcome Andrew Watt's presentation in particular. It's, as they say, in some of our countries, it's on the button in every respect. And I very much welcome the idea of the concept of the social contract. I understood it slightly differently. Martin Wolf, the economic correspondent of the Financial Times, wrote a book, I think it was in 2023, entitled the Crisis of Democratic Capitalism, in which he advocated for a New Deal, I suppose, kind of given the American connotations, and FDR, but here we would probably call it a new social contract. And I welcome all that you've said, Andrew. There was only one just point that I thought was missed in what has been said, and this is around the whole question of the availability of venture capital in the context of the productivity gap. I think we should understand, by the way, that if this productivity gap that has opened up between the US and ourselves continues to expand, all the gains of the post-war period will be lost, as well as our welfare states. But leaving that aside, I thought that more would be said about the venture capital, because it directly relates to the causes of that productivity gap, and in particular the failure to complete the capital markets union here. And I think if in any agenda that would be articulated from our side, we should be highlighting the importance of the rapid completion of the savings and investment union. Not that it will solve everything, but without it, we won't be able to do the rest. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you very much, Jack. Aurélie, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I will speak in French. Amia. Merci beaucoup. On a eu dans le débat précédent une question sur quelle est la définition de la compétitivité. Et donc, vous apportez l'un et l'autre un éclairage sur cette question. On a le sentiment, quand on écoute les institutions européennes, en particulier la Commission ces derniers temps, que la compétitivité se réduit à une question de coût du travail et de fardeau administratif et réglementaire, et qu'il suffirait d'enlever toutes les règles pour que d'un coup de baguette magique, l'Union européenne redevienne compétitive vis-à-vis des États-Unis et de la Chine. Or, vous montrez l'un et l'autre avec des nuances que c'est un petit peu plus compliqué que ça. Comment est-ce que vous expliquez que je veux dire, la Commission, j'imagine, a accès à des expertises aussi pertinentes que la vôtre, que les problèmes que vous pointiez ne soient pas traités en urgente priorité au regard du contexte géopolitique?
Thanks a lot. Andrea?
Thank you. I will speak in Italian. Sì, innanzitutto grazie per le presentazioni. Credo che ciò che abbiamo potuto imparare, diciamo, dai rapporti Letta e Draghi sia sicuramente un'evidenza della mancanza di integrazione delle politiche nell'Unione Europea. Mancanza di integrazione di politiche e di settori che ha determinato poi quello che anche il dottor Schein diceva rispetto alla crisi energetica, rispetto alla questione delle tariffe, rispetto ad altre questioni che sono state ben evidenziate dalle varie crisi che abbiamo subito e forse non gestito adeguatamente. Però credo che un'altra lezione che si possa ricavare dai rapporti Letta e Draghi sia una mancanza di integrazione politica, cioè di capacità europea di rispondere alle sfide, e credo che sia proprio questa la causa forse dell'erosione del contratto sociale che oggi è alla base, diciamo, anche del discorso che stiamo facendo, perché alla base del contratto sociale europeo c'è la capacità sostanzialmente dell'Europa di rispondere ai bisogni dei cittadini. Ora, se questa capacità di risposta viene a mancare, chiaramente i cittadini perdono fiducia nelle istituzioni e quindi perdono anche quella capacità di essere coinvolti nel processo istituzionale e decisionale che è parte integrante proprio del contratto sociale. Allora, tutte le questioni che anche Andrew Watt ha evidenziato rispetto alla capacità di investimenti, alle questioni fiscali, e che comunque sono anche oggi fortemente rigettate da alcuni Stati e quindi sono sottoposte a veti, evidenziano che la questione, a mio avviso, centrale oggi è una mancanza di integrazione politica dell'Unione Europea. Quindi la domanda che io volevo porre è: per quale motivo si continua spesso a parlare di politiche e quindi di mancanza di politiche, di mancanza di risposte a determinate settori o politiche, o insomma di settori, ma non si parla mai, diciamo, di una cabina di regia integrata, cioè non si parla mai, diciamo, della capacità dell'Europa di reagire in maniera integrata, quindi anche attraverso eventualmente un'avanguardia di paesi. La domanda è proprio questa: può oggi un'avanguardia di paesi che possono appunto unirsi e manifestare una capacità politica molto forte, dare un contributo ad un nuovo contratto sociale che vada a beneficio anche dei lavoratori di tutta Europa? Questa è sostanzialmente la domanda che volevo porre. Grazie.
Thank you very much. And George, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the floor. No problem. It's just following the intervention of Ms. Segne. Pardon. Well, for employers, sometimes competitiveness is very easy, cut the rights. I remember during the Lisbon treatment, there was a survey about European companies, why they were not competitive comparing to the other ones. And one of the most reasons, they said that the reason of European companies were not competitive was to have the risk assessment for safety and health. So this show how companies see it, the workers. Safety and health is an investment, but for them is a cost. So I think this, I still remember, Lisbon Treaty was so long ago already, but we already see how they think about it, the workers. So, and now we are talking more and more about competitiveness. So this is one of the questions, like Ms. Segne, cut the rights of the workers, and that's it. It's the magic wand. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Actually, before giving the floor back to the two speakers, Shaheen, I would still like to turn to you asking, what would a genuinely European investment strategy look like from your perspective if it were designed not only to boost competitiveness, but also to strengthen social cohesion, reduce inequalities, and support quality jobs across member states? Just to complete a bit the perspective. And Andrew, on your side, do you think there is more that trade unions need to do to play a stronger role in shaping innovation strategies so that productivity gains are shared fairly and technological transformation improves working conditions? And Shaheen, we start with you. It would be nice to get into the 5 to 7 minutes. Thanks.
Can you hear me well? Can you hear me well?
We can hear you quite nicely, and Swan, we can see you, and it's now you can start. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry for the connection. So about the investment strategy that you described, I think, you know, with the framework of NGEU, we had something quite compelling for a European-led, nationally and regionally delivered investment plan. Of course, we can certainly learn from this experience, and there are certainly a few improvements that can be made. But I think a new NGEU program of that nature may be a bit more focused on energy transition to achieve the first goal I have described earlier of improving Europe's energy price and energy price volatility. To me, would have a number of the properties that you describe. I think it would, you know, increase European employment, and it could be done by way of European conditionality in a way that enhances workers' rights. So I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. I think we actually have had with NGEU a fairly successful program that can certainly be tweaked and amended somewhat, but I think that offers a very good starting point. I was asked earlier, why is it that given the priorities that I have laid out, the priorities seem to be more focused on micro elements such as single market integration or labor market deregulation? I think it's a good question. I tend to think that a lot of these debates are driven and animated by micro economists and not by macro economists like myself. And I think as a result of that, micro economists tend to focus on micro improvements that can be achieved in individual markets. And very often, they fail to see the bigger picture and therefore the bigger problem. And so I think many microeconomists tend to think that the best way to improve the European economy's economic potential or its productivity is to focus on micro economics. And I think that's largely wrong and largely missing the bigger macro picture. And so I think one of the challenge is to move the conversation away from, issues related to single market integration and to labor market flexibility towards bigger picture issues. I think the Draghi report, just to be clear, because I have sounded critical of the Draghi report, I think the Draghi report was combining quite well both the micro and the macro approach. What I regret, however, is that the lessons that the European Commission seem to be taking from the Draghi report is actually mostly the micro and not so much the macro. So for instance, most of the investment part of the Draghi report is often forgotten when the Commission refers to it. And I think that's the challenge that we are facing. I think my hope is that the current crisis, the current new round of energy crisis, which is going to magnify some of our macro challenges, could be the opportunity to bring back the topic to more macro issues. And I'm really looking forward to the forthcoming proposal of the European Commission on tackling the energy price shock that we are experiencing. And I hope this will also bring back some of the discussions that I've mentioned earlier about industrial competitiveness and the relationship with China. My fear is that in the absence of real action at the macro level, there's only, you can do all the labor market deregulation and all the single market integration you want. If we have structurally higher and more volatile energy prices than everywhere else in the world, and if we are facing unfair Chinese competition without, the appropriate set of policies, all of this, labor market and single market integration is going to do very little. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andrew, back to you.
Thanks very much. Thanks for the question. So, yeah, I try to avoid repeating points that Shaheen's made because I'm largely in agreement with what he said. So, Lucy, you asked me about the trade union involvement in innovation. Let me say a few words about that and then pick up a couple of the questions. So, I think it's vital. I tried to make that case. I think trade unions need to be involved in the introduction of new technologies, but also in the whole process of social regulation at different levels. So here in Brussels, the European Social Dialogue, but right down to individual company level. So if I can make a short advertising break, next week we'll be presenting our benchmarking in Working Europe report that some of you are familiar with. One element in that would be some evidence that we've produced that shows that involving workers' organizations in decision-making at company level is good for productivity. So we actually have concrete evidence of that, and there are other evidence in the academic literature there. So I think that's, again, a kind of no-brainer. So how are we doing with that? Well, I think the adequate minimum wage directive, a lot of the discussions there is focused on the minimum wage aspect. But for me, more important is what it's doing in terms of strengthening collective bargaining in Europe, where there's a very important 80% target. That's admittedly a sort of longer-term aspiration, let's say. But that, I think, is pointing a bit the way that even the Commission has realised that we need these forms of dialogue, and the collective bargaining can play a sort of problem-solving role. We have the revision of the European Works Council Directive, which also opens up some avenues as well. Unfortunately, we have there. I disagree indeed with Letta, but I realise you had an intensive discussion also earlier in the day about the 28th company regime. Unfortunately, this is indeed, even if it's well-intentioned, I think, in terms of overcoming fragmentation, it's very problematic in terms of workers' rights and workers' participation in particular, and that is something that really needs to be urgently addressed. Let me address some of the questions that were put to me. Thanks very much, Jacques O'Connor, for your remarks. Much appreciated, and I agree with what you said. I mean, we could have a long discussion about Capital Markets Union, and Savings Investment Union, some complex issues in there. But broadly, I agree with you. It is an important area, and I think that the trade unions need to get involved in that debate as well. Just one point I would make here: we don't need to focus on venture capital specifically. I think that's a very US specific way they have to finance capital there in Ireland. There may be some sort of effects there washing over the Atlantic. I think in continental Europe, or more generally in the different member states, there are established ways to finance investment by small companies. We shouldn't forget that we used to have strong investment in Europe, right? So it's even if our capital markets were fragmented, right? So investment has weakened over the years, and we need to address why that's happening. So I don't think that sort of bank-based systems are necessarily incapable of financing the investment that European companies need, and we need in Europe. There may be some issues, though, about startups and innovative companies which lack the collateral that banks normally require when they make loans. And there we need to find European solutions, right? So I think we're very much in agreement. We just need to think a little bit about what those solutions could be. They could involve public development banks, for example, but also, by all means, innovative forms of private finance, if we can organize them in ways that fit well with our institutions. Let me just pick up quickly on the point that was made by the colleague from France and from Portugal, if I understood the point right. So, I mean, one of the... and I realize this is a very general point, but just to sort of take a really big step back, there's the perspective of the individual employer, right, who has a product that's made with inputs, including with labor, that's being sold on a market. And for the individual employer, there is, of course, a certain rationale in this in saving costs, because that's a competitive advantage for him, including saving labor costs, right? And what we've learned in a long historical process is that if that's the dominant driving force, right, that we don't have a stable development of our economies. And the whole history of the development of our industrial relations systems, and to some extent our political systems in Europe, going back now 150 years, is about how to overcome that dynamic, right? And that's why we also have employers' federations that aggregate the interests of employers and try to break through that sort of micro, a bit like Shaheen's point, that micro interest-driven logic, right? And of course, there's always a tension in there, and it's always quite complicated. But I think we need to try and work with the employers' federations at the aggregate level that realise that that individualistic logic is also damaging for their interests, if you like, their class interests, right? In the aggregate, and that's, I think, a slightly abstract answer. I realise, to the point that I think you were trying to make.
Thank you very much, and also for the really professionalism and courage, both of you, at this late stage of the afternoon and of our today's meeting. Laura, 3 minutes for the ETUCs as a kind of reflection of the whole day. You couldn't expect, not to be called. So.
No, just very, very quickly. I think it was, and first of all, thanks very much to Lucy, to Yolanda for the organization. It was a very important day, and indeed also for Esther. Then she had to leave, so she's sorry not being able to stay the rest of the day and to conclude. But it's very important for her and for the ETUC to have these moments, as we have had also in the past, together with the workers' groups, together with Lucy, for advancing and coordinating and exchanging on some key issues. And I think that today we really touched upon some of the key challenges we have in front. So this morning a bit more the, let's say, negative agenda that we have to resist or to correct from the European institutions, the 28 regime, but more in general, this simplification, the regulation pushes, and I think there as well, in this close coordination between the ETUC and the workers' group, the work that also Maxi will be doing on the opinion, this will be very, very important, and of course we are, as you know, as usual, at disposal and happy to coordinate, as well as the work that the European Parliament with Repasi will be doing, and the Council, and for this reason also very important that René was here. And then this afternoon more on the positive agenda, on the opportunities that open up, the Quality Jobs Act primarily, but also the need for investments, for a strong industrial policy, and now we can use indeed the strategies that we have had, but also the, let's say, more evident recognition of the fact that we do need a strong European industrial policy, that we do need the tools to reinforce our strategic autonomy, our economic and productive structures, and for this reason the importance of investments. And I think in this way also the discussion that we just had and the contributions that were brought to were very, very useful and important, and as well with the Quality Jobs Act with some important allies, and with Joaquin and with Estelle, but as well as, of course, with the intervention for Claude, and there as well this common work we'll do as ETUC and workers group. We look forward to that and to use this opportunity as well and to put the maximum pressure we can to get by the end of the year a strong Quality Jobs Act. So thank you very much again.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to limit myself really to hopefully a short statement. I mean, on a very serious note, what has been mentioned here today several times is the EU project needs to deliver to people, to workers, to employees. Otherwise, it's under big threat. I mean, when I've listened to Mr. Olson, the previous panel, saying, oh, we are wonderful because we are delivering on this, Commissioner is delivering on that, and stuff like that. I mean, my question, so what is there for the people? My grandma would say, that's lovely, but the bread is not cheaper for that. On the other hand, we have heard Joaquin Spain saying we are having too little of social legislation. So in a way, I mean, it's good to have these two basically opposite poles of opinions and interesting speakers enlightening the different elements, different details of a very concrete debate we have been having throughout the whole day here. And that's important. I mean, what has been said by Andrea, I guess, on we need to complete the political union. I mean, in a way, what was hidden the whole day is we would need to complete the EU project as such by all the dimensions which are already missing. And a lot of the problems we are facing today is that we are in a different phases of completion. The economic one being in a forefront and being very much pushed through. All the competitiveness debates are basically going this direction. With the social one, and in a way, I would say also the peace dimension of it is in a way slightly more hidden or just not keeping the pace with the economic one. And I mean, for the concrete work on the concrete files we have been debating today, it's very important to keep all of this in mind. I hope we gave a lot of fruit of thoughts to you, Claude, for working on the file you are currently working on, to Antonio, who was still sitting here a second ago, but I guess as a core-up of the 28th regime, I guess it's also important to hear in much more depth and much more detail the trade union position on the file. So what I can say is we keep on working on this. You know that this is definitely both are the items, both the topics are part of our priorities. So in a way we are fulfilling by that working on it. By saying that, I just would like to thank everyone who was involved in preparation of this meeting, because it was not easy. Starting with, of course, Secretariat, because you made the greatest part of the work on that, so thank you very much. I was happy the technical part was working today quite well, so and there was some comment on we need to be, you know, introducing much more. I mean, we are having quite a lot of experience here in the House on the introduction of new technologies and the problems we are having with connections. But thanks also to the technicians, of course, to the interpreters. Without you, and we really used you fully today. Thank you very much. And of course to you, as a very active audience. It's always unpleasant to be cutting your speaking time, but very pleasant that we have managed to choose the topic that is of interest and of importance to you. So it's a kind of double perception from my side. And by that, still a very technical comment, Andrew, with you, because we did have Marcus here on the 28th regime, and he mentioned that you're going to have a policy brief on the 28th regime really shortly. So we would like to send it to our participants, because connected with the issue of the debate here and his presentation. So once it's validated, we would just send it to you, if you are okay with that and interested in that. Yes, so we are making a promo for you as well. So by that, thank you very much for today's meeting. Safe trip back home if you are traveling back home, or enjoy the evening here in Brussels. And see you next week for the plenary. Thank you.